their vocabularies and nurtures a lifelong love of reading. That's why Reading is Fundamental, the nation's leading children's literacy nonprofit, offers free monthly read-alouds by popular authors through its Rally to Read program. Visit rallytoread.org to watch the read-alouds and discover exciting reading activities for school and home. Visit rallytoread.org.
Live from the land of cheese, beer, and unsolicited opinions, it's John and Gordy in the afternoon.
Hey, Matt Rothschild with you this afternoon. John and Gordy are off today, but I'm happy to be with you. And Aaron Zomers is in the booth, and we're going to have Angela Lang join us too at some point to help co-host. And you can join the conversation at any time you'd like. We talk about politics or birds whenever I'm behind the mic. The number to call is 855-752-4842. That's 855-75-CIVIC. Aaron, I'm still a little abuzz after yesterday's show because I thought Ruth Ben-Ghiat, the NYU professor and author of Strongmen, was so powerful a guest.
That was a great interview. Yeah. I guess it was very fascinating to hear the take for somebody who's studied authoritarians across history to tell us in very realistic and simple terms, so here's where we're at in this descent into authoritarianism. Some things compare well, or not well. Some things track with past regimes, but everything's moving really fast. And some very real things that we can do to not lose hope.
Yeah, she was good on all of that. I mean, her book, Strongmen from Mussolini the Present, really kind of lays out and outlines the what she calls the playbook of authoritarianism. Right. And the interesting thing that she was saying yesterday was Trump is improvising the playbook or writing a new chapter to the playbook with Elon Musk and the tech bros who are boring from within the government here. But she also was hopeful, and she gave a great defense of the need to vote and the need to protest, because I do run into people all the time who say, and maybe it's a problem with Madison because we had 110,000 people here opposed to Scott Walker for weeks and weeks on end, or weekends and weekends on end, and it didn't achieve what we tried to achieve. But, it doesn't always work. That's the thing. And if we're not out there protesting, if we're not showing Trump and his minions that they can't get away with this, or that they're going to meet some resistance, then, he'll just roll over us. So that was an interesting insight that she had for us.
I feel like even if it doesn't always result in immediate action that you're looking for, protesting still does send a message, and eventually it can add up where the Trump administration in the future can't say, well, no one said anything we did was wrong, because the No Kings rallies had millions of people showing up.
One of the things she studies in her is Chile under Pinochet, the dictator who overthrew Salvador Allende in 1973 with U.S. assistance and CIA assistance, and ended up torturing and killing thousands and thousands of people. But there was resistance there. There was nonviolent resistance. There was resistance from within the church. All sorts of members of civil society figured out a way to resist. Another point she made yesterday was, that resistance lasted more than a decade. And so we're just into almost the end of year one of Trump 2. So we have a little more time here on our hands where we need to resist. And she said we should take notes from those who have resisted longer and under harsher circumstances, because I think it's always kind of a conceit to say we're living in the worst moment ever in American history. And it's certainly a perilous moment, and I think it is a uniquely dangerous moment. But there have been, there was the Red Scare, there was McCarthyism, there was the Cuban Missile Crisis where the world almost blew up. And so, of course, there was slavery and there was genocide against Native Americans. So there's been a lot of hard times here in this country, and we've managed to make it through. She did say she has endless faith in the American public, which I kind of gasped at that because I'm not sure I share that endless faith after we've elected Donald Trump twice. So, but that was interesting to hear as well. So I know there are some people, she talked about being in conversation and at conferences with fellow authoritarian scholars. I'd love to be a fly on the wall at one of those.
Oh, yeah.
And it just reminded me that Jason Stanley, one of those scholars from Yale who fled to Toronto because he thought the climate here was so bad. He calls her an optimist or almost naive, maybe because of statements like that. But I'm going to try to get him on and just see how pessimistic he is and whether he has any hope going forward for us. I sure do have hope, though. I mean, I do think, as you mentioned, those No Kings rallies were really important. And some of the biggest rallies, if not the biggest rallies ever in U.S. history, coordinated rallies. And, there's a reason why Trump hasn't invoked the Insurrection Act, according to Ruth Ben-Ghiat yesterday. She said the blowback would be so bad. I'm wondering about that. I've been expecting Trump to do that. This would allow Trump legally to put tanks in the street. And essentially it would be a declaration of martial law. And, of course, you remember back right before the coup on January 6th, he had people like Mike Lindell, the pillow guy, walking into the Oval Office with the words martial law on his yellow legal pad. So I still think that's on the table there for these guys.
Yeah, unfortunately. But the more people keep showing up, it will just make it harder and harder for them to take an action like that.
And we saw the resistance to what ICE is doing with people in Chicago and L.A. and Washington, D.C. and everywhere, blowing whistles, tracking these people down, confronting these ICE guys, surrounding these ICE guys, making some of them retreat and leave people alone, at least temporarily. So all that, and she said that kind of resistance brought tears to her eyes. That was the quote I remember from yesterday afternoon. You can join the conversation. The number's 855-752-4842. It's 855-75-CIVIC. I'm Matt Rothschild talking with producer Aaron Zomers about the risk, the ever-present risk here under Trump 2 of authoritarianism, fascism, martial law. It can get worse. We're hoping it won't. We think that protest and voting will help turn things around. But you never really know. There was a little bit of news I saw, Aaron, right before we came on. Sad news for those who have followed the Kennedy family. Tatiana Schlossberg, JFK's granddaughter, Carolyn Kennedy's daughter, died today at 35. She just announced last month that she had leukemia. She's got 2 young kids, including a daughter who's just a year and a half old. And the thing that stuck in my mind when I saw her announcement a month ago, I guess she wrote something in the New Yorker and then the New York Times wrote about it, was that she had tried all her life to make her mom's life, Carolyn's life, as easy as possible, given all that Carolyn's lived through. And here's another tragedy for Carolyn Kennedy and the whole Kennedy family. So that's sad. If you want to comment on that, if you're listening and you want to talk about the Kennedy curse, we can bat that around too, 855-752-4842. We've got a great show coming up. We got Earl Ingram after the news at 2:30. Then at 3 o'clock, Scott Ross, who used to run One Wisconsin Now, and he does commentary for Wisconsin Public TV. You might have to have your beeper handy, Aaron, because at least online on Facebook, he's known to throw around some words that we can't air on Civic Media Radio Network. And then after 4, we got Jim Santel, who, he hosts the podcast, the show actually on the weekend here called Amicus, a Law Review. And I got to say, Aaron, I listen to that almost every week, at least parts of it. And I think it may be the best show on anywhere in America on the legal issues that are so much in the news these days, with Trump disobeying the law, disobeying the Constitution. So national issues and also statewide issues like Judge Dugan. He had a show about Judge Dugan a week or so ago. So we're going to have him on. He's one of the people I've relied on. I'm curious about you. Who you've relied on to help you get through this year, who you look to, whose commentaries or writings have allowed you to, not totally lose your mind in this crazy, ugly year. And I'm hoping the listeners will weigh in on that too. That's the open question for the moment. Who have you turned to during this very tough year to keep your chin up and also to understand really what's going on? Ruth Ben-Ghiat, for one, is someone I've turned to. Jim Santel for what's going on in Wisconsin and also legally at the U.S. Supreme Court. Another person I've turned to. Anyone in your mind popping up?
Yeah, Jim Santel is one that I turned to as well. Turned, not past tense, I guess, turned still. It's remarkable how he can put the law, very complicated topics, into language that anybody can understand. You just have to take the time to listen to him. And he's also very funny. So that helps too. But
he's so clear, though. That's the thing.
Yes,
You're right. He's
very much
absolutely so clear.
I also read some of Trygve Olsen's Substack, Searching for Hope, I believe it's called. He has some good stuff on there just about both the political stuff that's going on and AI, that side of the technology that's advancing and concerning a lot of people.
Oh, I haven't heard him on AI. That's interesting. A couple other people who I've relied on here in Wisconsin, David Cooper, the pastor David Cooper, former police chief here in Madison. He organized that rally in August, the Take Back the Cross rally up from State Street to the Capitol. And he's been also great on policing. He has a Substack about policing, and he's been tremendous about that. So he's someone I've relied on as well. Of course, Heather Cox Richardson is someone my wife reads religiously every day, and I read occasionally. Timothy Snyder on tyranny and on freedom. He's another authoritarian, scholar of authoritarianism. It's been indispensable to me. Here's an odd one, though. Dave Zirin, he's the sports columnist for The Nation, but actually his writing on politics, especially early on in the first couple months of Trump 2.0, he was the one who was saying, we've got to resist. We can't let Trump get away with this. We need to get into the streets. We need to do everything we can nonviolently to show that Donald Trump cannot stomp on the rights of immigrants and totally, trample the U.S. Constitution. So Dave Zirin was sounding the alarm earlier than most folks, and I tip my hat to him. Robert Reich, too, is someone I see.
Absolutely.
I see we got a call from Joanne in Madison. Let's take that.
Yes, hello, great show. I'd like to add something about authoritarianism from what I've learned from the uprising. What made the uprising so magical and so effective for the amount of time that we had it was the participation of the police and the fire folks who did not stand off from us. They joined us. Even though Scott Walker had given them some magical dispensation, they were one of us. And I think that in the future, we should be thinking of this for our resistance movements. That I still cry when I hear the bagpipes of the fire folks, and the strength that gives the community when we know that our defenders, the first responders, are with us. And what I think is a bad part of some of the resistance movements lately is that we've separated ourselves from those folks who could defend us against ICE and against the military, wrongly used and wrongly arranged by the powers that be, current powers that be. So,
very good points, Joanne. We're out of time, but I want to thank you for that call, Joanne from Madison. I'm Matt Rothschild. We'll be right back.
WMDX. Curiosity required. Partisanship optional.
Why are interscholastic sports called the last classroom of the day? Because they teach students important life lessons like teamwork accountability, and perseverance. School sports are so much more than a game. They're about developing the whole person. That's why they're an essential part of every student's education.
Encourage your student to participate in the last classroom of the day. Interscholastic sports in Wisconsin. This message presented by the WIAA and the Wisconsin Athletic Directors Association.
You've noticed a change in your teen. They seem distant, and you wonder if it's the usual ups and downs or something deeper, like substance use or mental health struggles. If you're worried, why wait to reach out? Hazelden Betty Ford offers specialized care for teens and young adults, plus support for families. Call 1-855-489-2383 or visit wegotyou.org, because love doesn't wait for a crisis, and change starts when you do. Sponsored by Hazelden Betty Ford Foundation.
Santa's checked the grown-up gift list text-to-win contest, and it includes a cookware set for Tony from Beaver Dam, listening to WMDX.
Hello.
Hi, this is Gordy Young. I'm calling from WMDX Radio.
Oh, you're kidding.
You're one of our grand prize winners. Congratulations, Tony. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Gordy.
And thanks for listening. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
You could be next with more chances to win on your local Civic Media radio station and the app.
Merry Christmas!
Hey there, Wisconsin. Tom Hartman here. Democracy is not a spectator sport, so join me each and every weekday right here on Civic Media for the Tom Hartman program from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Covering the news of the day and sharing ways for you to get off the sidelines and get active in your community, because change starts with you. Get involved and tune in to the Tom Hartman program Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. right here on your local Civic Media radio station.
I'm Angela Bassett. For 33 million Americans, one bite can cause a life-threatening reaction. Now, there's a needle-free option for epinephrine. Learn more at foodallergy.org/ready-to-act.
Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on for.
Hey, Matt Rothschild here. You're tuned into Afternoons with John and Gordy, but the guys are off today, so I'm subbing in, and I've got Aaron Zomers on the board. We've been talking about who you relied on to get through this year. Who did you see on TV? Who made sense to you? Who did you read that made sense to you? Whose podcast did you like that made sense to you? I rattled off a few names. So join the conversation, 855-752-4842. That's 855-75-CIVIC. I want to thank Joanne and Madison, and sorry we had to end that conversation for the break. I appreciate what you had to say. I do remember those days when the bagpipes and the firefighters came into the Capitol, and when Cops for Labor were courageously coming into the Capitol, showing their solidarity with those of us, 100,000 strong, who were protesting what Scott Walker was doing. And we've got Joe on the line already. So Joe in Madison, always appreciate hearing from you. What's on your mind today?
Great subject to bring up, and who do we look to? How do we keep going? I think sometimes I'm going to give you three examples, and I think that they're outside of the United States, but they still provide some inspiration. I had called yesterday to talk about Canada, which under Mark Carney and strongman Trump was attempting to say, you will be our 51st state. And he's kind of said the Canadian version of bite me, if you will, and turn things around. And instead, Canada is going on a brand new path, which has proved to be economically great and politically great for them. And they're moving forward. It's not without problems, but they are basically saying our time cemented into the American economics situation is over, and we're charting our own path. As part of that, I mentioned to you that he is emphasizing cooperation, not competitiveness, but cooperation with other countries. And Canada had set up a consulate in Greenland as a way of saying, let's work together on, mining, on tourism, on all sorts of things. And the consulate is kind of a first step to say our partnership starts. And I thought it was interesting. I was reading that some of the tech bros they want to take over Greenland. They see this as their island of the future. And so they had been thwarted by some very wily Greenlanders who heard about this effort that they the tech bros had to buy up property, which of course they could drop a whole lot of money real fast and buy up property. So they immediately put in legislation that said that you can't buy land in Greenland unless you are a Danish citizen or you've had 2 to 3 years, I think it is, of residency within Greenland. And apparently Denmark has very strict immigration laws. So that was a clever way, I thought, to say, you aren't going to come in here and just, walk all over us. But I guess one of the last pieces I would have is that the Ukrainian war has provided examples of people who, boy, if they can keep going, we all need to keep going, I think. I saw a clip of a man who said, I'm fighting for my country, period. I'm fighting for my children. And it's that basic for him. And there is, people want to search it out, they can find it. I can also send it to you to link for the website if you wanted. But it was footage, I think, through the Sun or the Daily Mail of, they have combat medics in Ukraine, and includes women who are working in that role. So they are working as a medic, but if they are fired upon by the rules of warfare, they can fire back. It is the most amazing GoPro footage you would ever see, in that it shows you what this trench warfare is like with, she is trying to administer medicine and stop the bleeding for people, her fellow soldiers who've been wounded in the trenches. And then at a certain point, the Russians have come and they're spraying the trench, and she picks up her submachine gun and sprays right back. And I thought, if that gal can keep going, I can keep going. There are people in Ukraine who fled, and there are people who stayed. And as one of the people who stayed, she gives me a lot of hope. And I'm thinking about her as we go forward into the next year. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it, man.
Oh, great point, Joe, as always. Yeah, if the Ukrainians can keep going, we can keep going here. And also your point on the tech bros, I just wanted to mention a book that I've been reading about Silicon Valley billionaires who've jumped over to the Trump team. It's called Gilded Rage. It's quite an interesting story about why these folks decided to saddle up with Trump. Mostly it's because they all felt sorry for themselves. They weren't getting enough respect from everyone in the country. So they went over to Trump's side, and also they knew they'd make a lot of money if they sidled up to Donald Trump. So Joe from Madison, thanks again for the call. We're talking about the year in review and, how you got through it, who you listened to, who inspired you, who made you laugh. Larry from Deerfield adds to the list that I rattled off that Stephen Colbert and Jimmy Kimmel and Seth Meyers and John Oliver and The Daily Show folks sure helped him. He also mentions preachers, Reverend Senator Raphael Warnock, Reverend Otis Moss III, as well as the Reverend Judge Everett Mitchell, who we had on this show just last week and gave a tremendous interview to us. And also those of us who were at the October No Kings rally heard Everett Mitchell give the best speech of anybody all day long there. Maybe one of the best speeches all across the country on that day when a lot of people were speaking. A really inspirational speech, and we're lucky here in Wisconsin and right here in Madison to have Everett Mitchell as a judge in our midst who is able to look beyond the narrow issues of his robe and really get out there in public and speak about crucial issues like democracy and like nonviolent resistance. So that was tremendously inspiring. Larry from Deerfield also mentions Bishop William Barber, who did Moral Mondays there for many years. So we will join the conversation right after the break with Earl Ingram, one of my favorites here on the Civic Media Radio Network, and we'll be taking your calls and texts at 855-752-4842. I'm Matt Rothschild. You're listening to Afternoons with John and Gordy on the Civic Media Radio Network.
If you ever need a friend, call me, 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 call me. If you need a friend, call me, call me, call me, call me, call me, call me, call me.
MDX, where conversations last longer than tweets.
Hey, Earl, thanks for joining us.
Hey, how are you doing, Aaron? It's good to hear you.
You as well. Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. Had some good time with family over the holidays. Yourself?
Oh man, I'm. It's always great to have time to reflect with the people you love, and but there's also a time to get back to business, and this is the time to get back to business. It's good to be connected with that old geezer.
Oh, you hurt me, Earl.
Yeah. Well, it's good to be a geezer, man, because you can hear music like what was just played and just realize just how beautiful, that was and is. How you doing, Matt? Thank you for the invite.
Right. I'm doing all right. Oh, you're tops on my list, so I'm glad you responded. I'm doing fine. I'm hanging in, having holidays had the kids over, the boys over, and going to cook some paella on New Year's Day, which I like. So.
Wow. Well, I don't get to do a whole lot of radio anymore. I'm doing a lot of podcasts.
I see that 3 times a week sometimes.
Well, sometimes more, but I've found that radio has its place. I like radio still, but the thing about the podcast is you don't take calls, and you can focus solely on the content of what it is you want to talk about.
So we had this amazing scholar on yesterday, Ruth Ben-Ghiat from NYU, the author of Strong Men.
All right.
And you'll appreciate this. So I'm in this chair here, and Aaron says we've got a call. And I just didn't want to take the call because Angela Lang and I were having a really intense conversation with the professor, and I had a couple other questions I wanted to ask. I didn't want to be rude to the caller, but I didn't want to interrupt the flow of the conversation because I didn't know where the caller was going to go,
Right.
So we just held the caller off until our conversation with her was over, and then after the break we put the caller on, which I wanted to do. But it's always a question of, what is the flow going to be like? And so when you said you can just focus on the guests that you have, really appreciated that. Yeah.
Oh, no question, man. I found the appreciation for podcasts. I really have. Miss doing radio, but if the default is podcasts, I'm all right with that.
Well, anything to get your voice out is important. I like the live. You got to be alert. You got to listen. You got to figure out where to go next in the conversation, which you need to do with a podcast as well. But,
yeah, don't get me wrong. I've done a lot of radio over the years. It's still my forte. Mm-hmm. If given the opportunity, I wouldn't say no, but I found an appreciation for doing the podcast as well.
Yeah. And you're always great with callers too, and I like the fact that I read somewhere where you said I don't view this as a show. I view this as a conversation. And
no, man, it's not a show. It's never been a show for me.
Yeah, I like that because the connotation of the word show is you're just doing a performance here, or you're showing off or something, and you never had that take. You didn't want to do it that way. You weren't about strutting on the stage. You just wanted to engage with people.
Well, you're talking about a blue collar guy. At the root of who I am is 34 years in the auto industry. And so I'm a union man. I've never forgotten that. It's at the essence of who I am and my spirit. And so as long as you know that, the other things will never cloud my judgment. I'm a blue collar guy, and I'll always be that.
Mm-hmm. But you were able to foster conversation, which is a real skill, which means being attentive to people and where they're coming from, where they're at. If they say something provocative, you ask them, like, I'm listening to an interview and someone says, there's this great song I was listening to and it really inspired me. And then the person who's interviewing doesn't even ask him what the song was. I'm saying, what's wrong with you, man? How can you not pick up on that? Or
15 seconds.
Or someone would mention a tragedy and they want to pick up on that.
Yes.
guys are on a much-deserved vacation today. But I'm here with Aaron Zommers behind the glass screen here and on the board, and you can join the conversation. We're doing a little year in review. We're talking about people who inspired us or whose work helped us sustain ourselves going forward in this very difficult year. The phone number to call or to text is 855-752-4842. That's 855-75 Civic. Malaya from Madison says Anand Giridharadas' book, The Persuaders, was a great book. Alexei Navalny was inspirational, Malaya says, and also read Patriot. So you can join that conversation anytime you like. But right now we're joined by none other than Earl Ingram, the host of the podcast, What's Going On with Earl Ingram on the Civic Media Radio Network. I'm sure his voice will be familiar to many of you. Welcome to the show, Earl.
Well, I want to say thank you very much for the invitation, Matt. It's always good to have a chance to, dialogue with you.
Likewise.
And this is always, I just feel like we're kindred spirits, and maybe it's because we're a couple of geezers who saw life at a different time, and we did. I mean,
right.
Every time I meet different people and conversations I have, I just realize how blessed our generation was, Matt, that we came along at the time that we did. Things weren't quite as complicated or complex. It certainly wasn't smooth sailing all the way, but we grew up at a time that was, I think, it provided opportunities for people to live the American dream who won't be able to do that today. People who could live the American dream without having a college degree or letters behind their names, and who didn't have to have a high school diploma.
Yeah, it's really hard. Hard on this next generation for sure, no doubt about it. Could dream of, the dream of owning a house right now is out of reach for a generation and a half of people behind us.
Oh, and retirement, right?
Yeah,
and pensions and all the things that I was talking to someone the other day, and we're talking about healthcare, the cost of healthcare, and I did a couple of podcasts about healthcare, and I said my entire life, I'll be 72. I was never without health care. My dad worked in the auto industry, and there were 13 of us, 13 children.
Wow.
And so we had health care all the way through. I walked into industry at 18 and stayed there until 54. I had free health care, the best. And that took me right up to Medicare. So, you contrast that with what people are dealing with today, Matt. It's almost incomprehensible how, what people have to deal with today. I don't know how I could have, it'd been a whole lot more difficult for us, my wife and I. We could send our children to daycare, and it was affordable. And none of those things are happening for people who are from a different era.
And a lot of that had to do with the crushing of the union movement in this country.
Yes.
Back in the 1950s, union households represented 33% or something of the total population. Now we're down to about 10%. Here in Wisconsin, the Walker's counter-revolution here cut the unionization rates almost in half. And so the ability to bargain with management to get the benefits that you were talking about, the health care benefits, to be able to retire securely. I mean, and right now, we had, people striking at Starbucks, but, they haven't been able to get a contract in 4 years since they first signed up to be a union. And so, companies can violate the law. Starbucks has been cited by the National Labor Relations Board for unfair labor practices, but what do they care? Because there's no real penalty that comes down on them. It's certainly not going to come down on them now in the Trump administration. And so the ability for people to bargain for a fair share or a decent deal is gone by the wayside. So we're in a position here where the corporations, landlords, anyone with power over other people, they've got the upper hand. And,
Matt,
it's just really hard for people right now.
Try to wrap your arms around. I got a buddy who lives in Washington State, The minimum wage in Washington state is $21 an hour, the highest minimum wage in the nation. The minimum wage in Wisconsin is $7.25 an hour.
Yeah, that's a sin.
Yeah, it clearly is, but it just goes to show what people are up against.
Yeah, and if Democrats are able to take over the state capitol in 2026 and still hold on to the governorship, raising that minimum wage to a living wage, a decent wage, has got to be a top priority. Priority one.
It is still just unimaginable. People may think that we're not being truthful, but Google it. The minimum wage for the state of Wisconsin is $7.25 an hour, and soon to be 2026. That should be criminal.
And just doing the math on it, so that's about $14,000 or $15,000 a year. Rent for people is about $1,000 a month. That's $12,000 out of your $15,000 would be going to rent. I mean, right now in Wisconsin, certainly in Madison, if you're renting and you don't have a great job, you are paying 50% or more of your wage is going just to have a roof over your head.
Well, the working poor. Not only do you have a roof over your head, but you have a roof over your head with a house that is not sealed, and certainly the cost for heating it during the winter months add another $5,000 to $6,000 to people. It's called the working poor. The working poor is the number is escalated, and we don't hear from the working poor because in many instances the working poor don't vote, and so they're basically kind of left out in the cold.
Well, how do we get the working poor to vote more, Earl?
Well, I've said this to the Democratic Party, and instead of working towards trying to pry back people who live in rural America who have decided to vote Republican, those who, when you and I were young, Matt, voted Democrat because the mom and pop farms, the paper mills, unions, and opportunities were in the northern parts of the state. They decided, many of them, that what they lost was because of Democrats, and they chose to go the other way. My thing is, almost 45, 50% of the American people don't vote. Why don't we spend some time and effort organizing and reaching out to the people who don't vote? And then we don't have to worry about that thin margin between Democrat and Republican. If we can just pry back 7% of people who don't vote, we do well. Republicans aren't foolish. Republicans are on campuses mobilizing and organizing young voters. Scott Walker, that's what he's in. That's what Charlie Kirk. They're in on university campuses, and they're called the Young Republicans. Where's the Democrats? Reciprocal kind of, message. Why are Democrats not doing that?
That's a good question. Earl Ingram, he has the podcast, What's Going On with Earl Ingram, on the Civic Media Radio Network. I'm Matt Rothschild. Some people don't vote because they think it just doesn't matter. And I'm sure you've run into folks who tell you that. How do you respond to that?
Well, it's hard for me to tell people who say it doesn't matter, who have voted in the past. One of the things that I'll never forget is the black community when Barack Obama ran. And people who had never voted in their lives came to vote. They were led to believe that if they voted for Barack Obama, their whole lives were going to change, as if there was some magic transformation because of one man got in office. People who struggled, who had never voted before, they were led to believe that. And when he got elected, and things really didn't change for them, they said, okay, why am I voting? And so people who struggle to keep a roof over their head, Matt, people who struggle to put food in their stomachs, people who struggle to put clothes on their backs, people who live in war zones. They don't see voting being the panacea or the magic elixir that's going to change their lives.
Were you
go ahead.
Were you disappointed with Obama?
No, because I understood that Obama was one man, and that the way our system is set up, there is no magic man. You have to have the Congress, the Senate, and the presidency for more than 2 years in order to be able to really transform and change things. The promises that were made by Barack Obama, it wasn't his fault alone. He couldn't wave a magic wand and transform things. He had Democrats that didn't support him. And so he did the best he could in the time that he had. What he did do was corporations made more money than they had ever made in the history. And so, Barack Obama was selected before he was elected. And what I mean by that is there were people who saw him as a young man prior to his speech that he did in 2004, I think it was, at the Democratic Convention. And they, at that point in time, realized, the moneymakers, that this is a guy who had some gravitas. And so, they selected him long before he got elected. And what did he do? He came in and business was booming. People made a lot of money under Barack Obama and the Democrats. A lot of people who struggled and suffered remained in that dynamic even during his 8 years.
One of the things I fault him for is he let the bankers off the hook who had just
Right.
devastated the economy in 2008. They came into the White House. They were worried he was going to tell them that they were, going to be out of a job. And what he told them was, according to I think Woodward's book, was, "You've got a PR problem. Let me help you." So,
well, see, Matt, see that, and therein lies the reason that people don't vote. They don't believe. Many people don't believe, and you look at what's transpiring in our nation today. For heaven's sakes, Congress people who should be at the vanguard and not allow a dictatorship. The United States Supreme Court, which should be there to prevent what we see happening right now. And so I kind of understand why sometimes people don't vote. They don't see it as transforming their lives.
I'm talking with Earl Ingram. I'm Matt Rothschild, stepping in for John and Gordy on Afternoons with John and Gordy on the Civic Media Radio Network. Let's talk about Trump and the year we just saw and how to make sense of that when we come back. And you can join the conversation, 855-752-4842. That's 855-75-CIVIC.
Holidays, headlines, and way too much eggnog. Happy holidays from Civic Media.
Always a good time when you stop in at Ooga Brewing in Beaver Dam. Tomorrow in the Ooga Brewing Tasting Room, catch the acoustic rock group Tilting Windmills, featuring Jason Freemuth and other local artists playing from 2 to 6 p.m. And while you're there, be sure to order a tasty beer tail and raise your glass as Ooga Brewing rings in the new year at 6 p.m. sharp. Happy holidays from Ooga Brewing Company, located at 301 South Spring Street, part of Beaver Dam's vibrant downtown.
People are very concerned about the impact of marijuana, especially on young men, if they are heavy users. Does that alter the brain? Because there's been some research that says it leads to psychosis.
Is Representative Tom Tiffany right? Is there evidence linking marijuana use to psychosis? Yes. Research links marijuana use to psychosis, though causation isn't proven. A review of 32 studies found lifetime use raises psychosis risk, especially for adolescent users, who are 11 times more likely to develop psychotic disorders than non-users. Recreational marijuana is legal in 24 states, including Illinois, Michigan, and Minnesota. I'm Trisha Young for Wisconsin Watch. Fact Briefs are bite-sized fact checks of trending claims produced by Wisconsin Watch and GigaFact. Read more at wisconsinwatch.org.
CVS Health supports people in the moments that matter, from picking up a prescription to connecting care. With nearly 5 million daily interactions and serving 185 million consumers and 1.5 million healthcare professionals, CVS Health holds a trusted place in healthcare. By simplifying care and improving health, we're helping people get the care they need. Learn more at cvshealth.com/Investor Day.
Seems like nobody in America agrees on much of anything these days.
But can we agree the federal government shouldn't tax people into poverty?
If you work full-time, you should be able to afford your basic needs. Don't you think? We're the patriotic millionaires.
We believe your full-time job should cover what it costs to live. We think your first $45,000 of income should be tax-free.
And multimillionaires?
We should pay more to fund your tax cut. Go to first45taxfree.com to learn more. A working class tax cut paid for by millionaires. That's an idea we can all agree on.
Listen to the Civic Media exclusive podcast, Busted Pencils.
Our guest, Dr. Jonathan Gerko. Johnny, jump in there.
I think there was very little radical about.
Change, change, change. Change, change, change. Change, change, change.
Hey, Matt Rothschild with you here on Afternoons with John and Gordy. The guys are off today. I'm joined by Earl Ingram, the host of the podcast, What's Going On with Earl Ingram, that you can find on the Civic Media Radio Network at civicmedia.us. Earl, before the break, you mentioned our current president and him wanting to be a little dictator, as he showed us over the last year by putting troops in our streets, and showed us, over the last couple of weeks with his aggression against Venezuela, which I think is being underreported and undersold in the mainstream press. I saw an article in the New York Times today. They mentioned the fact that the CIA blew up this part of this port in Venezuela. They didn't mention anything about it being illegal, but there you go. How do you make sense of this year we've been through?
Well, Matt, before I go there, I want to say to Aaron Zommers, hey, Aaron, I don't know where you got your pedigree in music, man, but you deserve one.
Thanks.
But anyway, Matt, what I would say to you is, as you ask why people don't vote. You look at what is taking place in this nation, and I've said this for many years. The real threat to our nation is not from the outside, it's from within. And people would laugh at me and say, what are you talking about? Well, we see it now. Media, the last time I checked, Matt, media was supposed to be free in this country. Somewhere I read, as Dr. King once said,
great speech, too,
that media was free in this country. Media is not free in this country anymore. And that's not a good thing. It can't be a good thing, Matt. You and I lived at a time when media was free. And these kinds of things could not have happened. For heaven's sakes, freedom of speech on college campuses were free. And so young people had a chance, while they were young, to debate things, to see our nation through a different prism. They weren't penalized for having freedom of speech. That was what kind of built our nation and made it what it was. But for heaven's sakes, universities have cowered. They've been made to bow. We can't have the students on these campuses speaking like that. They've been brainwashed. So what we'll do is we'll shut them down. Congress, which is supposed to be the stopgap, the people we elected to look out for our best interests, are now bowing. And so, we can talk about all these other people and what they're not doing, and we can talk about what's going on in Venezuela and the despot in Venezuela, and you compare him to the one we have. And come on. I just don't know, Matt. There are 3 years. How do we endure? We've been dragged through hell. More hell in 1 year than I guess I can even remember. I used to think as a young man, when Ronald Reagan got into office, I said, oh my God. When George Bush Jr. got into, oh my God, these people. Man, bring back Ronald Reagan and George Bush Jr. Yeah, come on, man.
Earl Ingram, you make this great point about the universities caving and being cowards, and the media has caved. The Washington Post caved, ABC caved, CBS is caving, and you had law firms caving.
Yes.
It was just so embarrassing. I mean, these law firms that are making ridiculous hourly wages, all caving to Donald Trump, and the university system. I wish the University of Wisconsin system stood up more to Donald Trump. And it's just been one act of cowardice after another. Some judges have stood up, not the judges at the U.S. Supreme Court, but some judges have stood up, and the people of this country have stood up at those rallies, at the No Kings rallies, or when ICE comes to town. People are blowing whistles, literally blowing whistles on ICE. So that's one of the ways I think we're going to endure. How do you think we're going to endure these next 3 years?
Matt, I generally have an answer for a lot of different things. But I don't know how it's possible, Matt. And when you get past 70, 24 hours seem to be 365 hours because time flies by so fast. But I can't even begin to imagine how we hold it together for the next 3 years, Matt. I mean, we've got a man who has to put his name on everything, ownership. Right? I mean, the Kennedy Center. What's in the mind of a person that says my name has to be ownership of everything that's in this nation? And not enough people are willing to push back on it, Matt, and say this is wrong, this is not right. We should realize that this is not normal.
Yeah,
that should be talked about nightly, not where we're at now, where people say, well, we can't talk about that because, I talk to people and they say, well, I don't even want to hear it anymore. They're tired of all of it. That's not the answer to it. The answer isn't we stick our heads in the sand, Matt, and let him keep doing what he's doing. The answer is we push back. Absolutely. Collectively, every day.
Yeah, there you go. We need to push back. I think it's going to be that combination of pushing back nonviolently from below and the incompetence and corruption and pathological narcissism in Trump it's going to allow us to survive this. Earl Ingram, thanks so much for being my guest on Afternoons with John and Gordy. Earl Ingram has the podcast What's Going On with Earl Ingram on the Civic Media Radio Network. And I'll be right back with Scott Ross after this break. Please stay tuned for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
98.7 WMDX Columbus, Madison's real news and great conversation. A Civic Media station. WMDXradio.com.
ABC News, I'm Mike Dabusky. 7.5 million Americans now have the flu, according to new data out today from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. That's up significantly from last week when the CDC said there were approximately 4.6 million cases. Flu cases are being reported as high or very high in nearly 30 states, and the CDC also says that more than 80,000 people have been hospitalized with the illness. About 3,100 people have died. Israel now says it's going to ban 37 aid organizations, including Doctors Without Borders, from entering the Gaza Strip starting January 1st.
In a statement from the Israeli government to ABC News, they say that the affected NGOs have failed to meet required security and transparency standards. And they add that these findings, certain employees of internal organizations were involved in, quote, terrorist activity.
ABC's Maggie Rulli. Washington is in mourning over the death of Tatiana Schlossberg, the granddaughter of President John F. Kennedy. This is ABC News.
Our lakes are gorgeous. Just don't swim in them. 92.7 WMDX, keeping Madison honest, one broadcast at a time.
For Civic Media News, I'm Savannah Tomei Olson. At the end of the year, we're highlighting some noteworthy stories from 2025. Joanne Krulatz covered the retirement ceremony for Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice Ann Walsh Bradley in June.
I say today to all of you gathered here, it has indeed been a long journey from the old Swamp Inn to serving as Chief Justice of the Wisconsin Supreme Court.
Originally from Richland Center, Chief Justice Ann Walsh Bradley graduated from Richland Center High School in 1968. She earned her bachelor's degree from Webster University in 1972 and worked as a high school teacher before graduating from the University of Wisconsin Law School in 1976. In 1985, she was appointed as a circuit court judge in Marathon County. 10 years later, the justice made history by becoming the first woman to be elected to the Wisconsin Supreme Court. While it has been a long journey, she stated one thing has remained constant.
We knew then 30 years ago, and we know now, that to ensure a just legal system, one that reflects the history and hopes of this state, we must make the courts more accessible to the people. No matter if you are rich or poor, powerful or powerless, no matter your station in life, regardless of your political or religious beliefs, our courts exist to serve all of the people of this state.
Walsh Bradley's tenure is the fifth longest in the history of the Wisconsin Supreme Court. She participated in more than 28,000 cases and wrote almost 600 opinions. She was replaced on the bench by Susan Crawford. I'm Savannah Tomei Olson. This is Civic Media News.
Badgers basketball tonight. Hi, I'm Mike Clemens with sports. Men's college hoops. The Wisconsin Badgers host the UWM Panthers tonight at the Kohl Center. Head coach Greg Gard asked, what's he looking for from his team in tonight's game?
Quite frankly, just we got to play harder, and that's something I didn't think we did. When I watched it in person and going through the film, it was obvious. Good teams will make you look foolish if you don't.
NBA, the Bucks beat the Hornets in Charlotte, 123-113. Bobby Portis with 25 points, Giannis with 24. It's the first time since October the Bucks have won back-to-back games. The athletic director at UW-Platteville has been fired. Michael Knipe was hired a year and a half ago. No details. University officials say it's a personnel matter. NFL, the Packers' Micah Parsons had surgery on his left knee to repair the torn ACL he suffered in Denver 2 weeks ago. The average recovery time is 9 to 12 months. With sports, I'm Mike Clemens.
Your neighbors are talking. Leaders are deciding. Madison's story unfolds daily on 92.7 WMDX.
I'm meteorologist Rodney Price. Clouds around the area for this afternoon as some snow moves in. Highs in the mid-20s, wind chills in the single digits at a light southwest breeze. Snow will end tonight. Total accumulations an inch or less, mostly cloudy and lower 20s. Right now, it's 19.
You're a storyteller, negotiator, artist, innovator. Whatever your passion, whatever your skills, behind the scenes or in front, you belong here. a career in broadcast media. Local radio and TV stations in every town and city need someone like you. So do what you love and bring your talent to life. Your passion, your skills, your career. You belong here. Learn more at youbelonghere.media.
Oh, this is Robert Pilot of Native Roots Radio. On our show, we share stories from Turtle Island, highlighting the people and issues shaping our communities. From protecting water to treaty rights and preserving languages and traditions, we cover it all. Hear voices like Arvina Martin of Emerge, Wisconsin, Dr. Stately, Robert Lilligren, and more, because Native issues are human issues, and human.
Matt Rothschild here. Welcome back to Afternoons with John and Gordy on this snowy afternoon here in Madison. All across Wisconsin, folks are supposed to get about 1 or 2 inches this afternoon and this evening. John and Gordy are off today, so I'm subbing in here with Aaron Zomers at the controls. And I'm delighted now to have on the show an old friend of mine, Scott Ross, a former head of One Wisconsin Now and a commentator on Wisconsin Public TV show Here and Now. Scott, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, Matt. Thank you for the invitation.
Oh, I'm looking forward to the conversation. I also want to invite any of our listeners to call in or text in at 855-752-4842. That's 855-75-CIVIC. We're talking about the disaster that is Donald Trump, and we'll get to other topics, I'm sure. But, Scott, how'd you make it through the year anyway?
Sober. You know, so that's good, right?
And that's many years. How many?
Yeah, 20.
Oh, so, congratulations.
Yeah, so next year my sobriety can buy a drink, if I make it. But, you know, yeah, it has been a very, very difficult year. And, you know, I'm a middle-class-ish, you know, white, straight guy. So, like, I can't even imagine what some of the people out there who've been targeted specifically by the Trump administration for eradication, for punishment, for deportation can be wondering about what is supposed to be a country in which we have freedoms, the rule of law, and such.
Yeah, it's just been so extraordinary, this attack on civil liberties, on civil rights, on freedoms, the demonization of immigrants, the demonization of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender folks, especially trans folks. It's just been one assault after another coming down from Donald Trump. We have what I consider to be fascists in the White House. And I think Donald Trump himself is very cozy with fascism, if not an out-and-out fascist himself. He's an ultranationalist. He's a racist. We talked about that yesterday with Professor Ruth Ben-Gee out of NYU, who wrote Strongman. And she doesn't quibble with those terms either. And you've used that F word. I saw you use that F word on public TV here in Wisconsin. How do we combat this fascism that's right in our face?
Well, I think the thing to remember about it is there are more of us than there are these fascists. You know, there are more of us. Unfortunately, I think a lot of our leadership is too weak in order to take them on. And I don't want to like go down on the bashing of, you know, everything and blah, blah, blah. But I'll just say, you know, I'm giving an example. You talked about the ruthless attempted eradication of trans people that's gone on with the Republican Party under Trump. And the pathetic way in which, you know, my side, the Democrats, I've been a Democrat my whole life, except for when I was a reporter way back out of college. I was a registered independent in Pennsylvania. But, you know, we have heard nonstop this onslaught of, oh, they're sending your kids to school and then they get transgendered surgery at your school. Well, the fact is, Matt, is that the most comprehensive study of surgeries for minors related to that issue was completed in 2022, and it found that there were 151 cases of surgeries involving, you know, chests and such. 147 of that 151, 97% were cisgender men who had excessive breast tissue and wanted to have that taken care of. And I'll just say, like, I had that done because I used to weigh 487 pounds and I'm right around 205. And so I had like a lot of skin that had to be, and I was above, I was older than 18. But again, this, I don't understand how time and time again, and whether it's economics, whether it's this, where it's the threat of, Muslims, whatever the heck it is, why our corporate media continues to take the out and out repeated lies by the Republican Party as some sort of debatable motion. Time and time again, for how many years have they been eschewing trickle down economics? And at what point in time has that worked in any way, shape, or form? And that's what confounds me.
Yeah, the media coverage is appalling. I was just reading a story about Trump's assault on Venezuela, on this port in Venezuela. The first two paragraphs of the New York Times, just the party line. No suggestion whatsoever that this is unusual, abnormal, illegal, against international law. Just stating what the administration said was happening as a fact, and then quoting two unnamed administration sources.
But then, Matt, here's my question, okay? Because like I left One Wisconsin Now in 2019. And that was a lot of stuff that we did. Like we went after and tried to make sure that the progressive voice, criticisms of Republican policy ideas and such showed up in the corporate media, right? Building relationships. That thing we hear on the Democratic side so much about organizing, we got to organize. Well, it's not all about knocking on doors. Like there were about 80 people making news decisions in the state of Wisconsin, and it was our job to organize them so that, they saw us to be credible and they used our stuff, right? I don't know what's going on with that right now. I don't know who's in charge of making sure that every time there's some kind of ridiculous comment made by a Wisconsin Republican, like, for instance, Tom Tiffany, who is running for governor and the presumed nominee for the Republicans, why is he not being pounded the claims he's making over and over again in the press? It's just, it confounds me because, again, there's 730 days in a 2-year election cycle, and why do candidates get on the phone and raise money and call you, which they're doing right now, very much so because it's, almost a deadline. They do it because they want to communicate. They want to pay to communicate with people. So why would you wait until 2 months before the election before you're trying to influence the media to go after what the Republicans are? We need to create an atmosphere in which Republican ideas are rejected so that our ideas are not rejected.
Yeah, there isn't much pushback on Tom Tiffany right now. That's for sure. I'm Matt Rothschild. I'm talking with Scott Ross here on Afternoons with John and Gordy. The guys are off today, so we're subbing in. I'm subbing in here, and Scott's on at least for a half hour. I might make him stay longer. You can join the conversation, 855-752-4842. That's 855-75-CIVIC. We got a text from Steve in Milwaukee, who writes, I'm reminded of Stalin and how he took over the media. No one's allowed to criticize him. These big networks like CBS, ABC, NBC, capitulating to a weak man. That's so true. And now, as Steve writes, Trump's attacking NPR and public broadcasting. Yeah, I mean, there isn't sufficient pushback for sure. And I do wonder about the strategist on the Democratic Party, both in media relations and also in just general strategy. You've been critical of Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. Do you think it's time for both to go?
Well, I mean, again, like I look at where are we in terms of, if you look Democrats versus Republicans, where are we in terms of the power that the two parties have, right? The Democrats control nothing in Washington, D.C. And this is something that just, it drives me crazy. And you probably saw me whine about it on Facebook before. And maybe your viewers don't know this, but the last time that a majority of the justices on the United States Supreme Court were appointed by a Democratic president was a month before I was born, May 14th, 1969, 55 Ouch. Years. And do you know what next year is? We're about to ring in 2026. It will have been 80 years since a Democratic president appointed the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court. And yet, do-nothings like Dick Durbin, who runs the Senate Judiciary Committee and who was in charge for 4 years when we were in the majority, allow us, my party, to lose debates over court packing because, the temerity of us to even discuss holding crooks like Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito, who are bought and paid for by, Hitler enthusiast billionaires, like Harlan Crow.
Right.
And we don't even have that debate. And how is that possible? That everybody doesn't know that one party, the Republican Party, has controlled what we have created to be the last line of say in American government for 55 years.
Yeah. And the idea that we shouldn't, even raise the question of whether we should add new members to the U.S. Supreme Court. I mean, we got to do something about this court because it's a crooked court, as you point out, and it is the most reactionary court. I mean, people who are naive about who Chief Justice John Roberts was, how can you be naive after Citizens United or naive after the immunity decision?
There was a documentary out about big money in government. I don't remember which one it was, but I was sitting in my basement, you were kind enough. It's been a long time since I had a drink. So what do I do in Wisconsin, right? Where the pastime is going to bars, right? For fun and socializing. Like, I had to get away from that, right? So, what do? I started with doing jigsaw puzzles, where there's only so many jigsaw puzzles you can do. So I regressed even further, and I started doing Legos. So sometimes I sit in my basement and I play with Legos, and now I have an incredibly large set that's stored away in a storage bin, and I want to donate to somebody at some point. But I'm sitting there doing my little Legos one night, and this documentary about big money comes on. And it was when John Roberts was, again, remember with John Roberts, he was named a justice, and then, right-wing lunatic, racist pig, William Rehnquist, died and went to hell. And so Bush Jr., raised him to be the Supreme Court justice, the Chief Justice. And there's this documentary of Dianne Feinstein, who at that time was the ranking Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Committee. She might have even been in charge. My brain is a little bit fuzzy from 20 years ago. But she's literally taking him around. And a reporter says, "What about your ties to the Federalist Society? Is that concerning?" Does John Roberts answer the question? No. Dianne Feinstein says, he's not taking questions right now. Oh. And the reporter, to her credit, asked a second time. And John Roberts just stood there all smug with that look on his face, with that I'm not the most racist Chief Justice in the history of America look on his face. And Feinstein says, yeah, he's not taking questions. I mean, that sort of...
Just running interference for the bad guys.
Seriously, the worst guys. Yeah,
absolutely.
The worst guys. You know what I love about our current Supreme Court? I call them I use a bad word, but it rhymes with Hitler and the Six, because... Trump, again, I consider Trump to be, as close to a Nazi as we've had, because he wants the eradication of specific groups of people, which I think is the definition of small n Nazism. All right. So you've got 6 archetypes on the Supreme Court. You've got the drunk, Kavanaugh. You got the pervert, Thomas. You got the trad wife, Coney Barrett. You got the mama's boy, Ann Gorsuch, Buford's kid. You got the religious freak, Alito, and you've got the racist, John Roberts. I mean, that's a heck of a story. Yeah. That's what we've got. So at least everybody is represented. In the past, Republicans like Nixon said, let's put mediocre people on because mediocre people deserve to be represented on the court. And now, we've sort of gone all that. But again, it's that thing of I think there's 3 serious things that the Democrats need to ask themselves. And question these. One, and this is, this for me is personal in the sense that why is my generation, Gen X, the only generation to vote all 3 times for Trump? Why is that? Second, what are Democrats going to do to distance themselves from the idea that people think we're weak? Because there are lots of voters out there who think that Trump is terrible, but they're like, I'll take the strong freak over the weak person all the time. And 3, what are Democrats going to do to make sure that their next president has a Democratic majority in the Supreme Court and maybe appoints the Chief Justice for once?
Yeah, let's try to get to some of that after the break. That's Scott Ross. He used to be at One Wisconsin Now. You can now hear him on the Wisconsin Public TV show Here and Now. He's a commentator and a pundit there. And he used to run One Wisconsin Now back in the day. I'm Matt Rothschild. I'm subbing in here on Afternoons with John and Gordy because the guys are away. And we'll be taking your calls and texts. And I see, Matt, you got a call. If you can just hang on after the break, we'll take that. The number to call is 855-752-4842, 855-75-CIVIC. We're talking about the year in review. What is Trump doing to our democracy, and how do we save our democracy? How do we endure 3 more years of Donald Trump? And also, who have you relied on for inspiration to get through this year? And who are you looking for inspiration in the year to come? We'll be right back. Please join that conversation. 855-752-4842.
Do
Because democracy deserves a little airtime. WMDX.
Herbal Aspect has landed. That's right, Madison's go-to cannabis destination now has a brand new location in Sun Prairie.
Wait, 4 locations? That's a high level of convenience.
With 3 Madison locations and now Sun Prairie, a great cannabis experience is always close by. Our expert staff is here to help, whether you walk in, call, or order online. Mention Radio 420 and get a special discount. So stop by Herbal Aspect in Sun Prairie, because great cannabis isn't just a pipe dream.
Nice. I'm rolling over now.
Herbal Aspect.
Transform your bathroom with the beautiful quality of Bath Planet. Bath Planet has earned the Good Housekeeping seal, a symbol of quality and consumer confidence for over 100 years. And right now, for a limited time, you can upgrade your bathroom for 50% off installation, or choose 18 months with no interest and no payments. But you need to call now. This special offer is only available by calling 800-329-4115. That's 800-329-4115. Call 800-329-4115 right now before the offer ends.
School sports are played by humans, coached by humans, and officiated by humans. So the next time you're sitting in the stands at a school athletic event, please remember this and maintain your humanity, especially when it comes to judging and critiquing athletes, coaches, and officials. Please show your fellow humans some respect. They'll appreciate your empathy.
This message presented by the WIAA and the Wisconsin Athletic Directors Association.
Is there holiday cheer in Wisconsin? We take it seriously. Supper clubs will pour tens of thousands of old fashions, sweet, sour, everything in between. So cheers and happy holidays from all of us with Civic Media.
Join me, Tom Hartman, each and every weekday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for the Tom Hartman program right here on Civic Media. I talk about the issues that all Wisconsinites can get behind, from unrigging our economy so it works for all of us, not just the billionaire class, to improving our representative government, to delivering on the promise of we the people. Tune in middays right here on your local Civic Media station from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for the Tom Hartman program. Tag, you're it.
John nor Gordy. I'm Matt Rothschild, 7 and here for the guys who are off on a much-needed vacation. And I've been speaking with Scott Ross, former head of One Wisconsin Now and a commentator at Wisconsin Public TV on Fridays. And we're going to continue that conversation on how we respond to Trump, what the Democratic Party needs to do, what we all need to do. The number to call is 855-752-4842. That's 855-CIVIC, because we're on the Civic Media Radio Network here. And we've had Matt from Middleton holding over the break. So let's bring Matt into the conversation. Aaron, Matt, what's on your mind?
Hey, guys. Thanks for filling in for John and Gordy. I think, unfortunately, we are seeing I think most countries are fairly bipolar, like humans are generally. But we're seeing that dark side of our history and our nation, which is the Confederacy, which was, back in Jim Crow South, was the inspiration for Hitler. And now that they have conjoined with the corporations and completely taking over, it is a kind of fascism, but an American one. I honestly think we're not going to make it the 3 years. We are going to break up or have a world war, which they are basically pushing us into, because the American military is a threat to the world. Let's be honest. They consume more oil than 40, 70 some countries combined. It's one of the only sources of economic activity in America other than finance. And right now they're trying to fill it with Christian nationalists who are on this holy war crusade against Muslims, and they want forever war. I think we should contemplate breaking up as a country. I don't want to deal with these Confederates anymore. They're never going to give up their fight for complete Christian control of everyone's lives and everything. I mean, what are your thoughts? I don't think we should stay together.
Well, Matt from Middleton, appreciate the call and the comments. Scott, what do you think?
Well, if we do go to civil war, I hope, ICE fights on the side of the South, so that they can lose again. Like the idea of breaking up the United States seems a little beyond what I would support. Next year is our 250th anniversary. June 14th is Trump's 80th birthday. It's the flag. That's Flag Day. So there's some irony there. But yeah, no, I mean, we're not going to come together as a country anytime soon. But we have seen the ruthlessness of the right wing and its allies of corporate media, that they are willing to do and say anything in order to keep themselves in power and in order to punish their enemies, to create a permanent that word.
Kekistocracy.
Yes. And I think that's the way we have to approach it. And, for me, if we are in this existential fight for democracy,
right.
if the threat that he posed in being reelected is real, I think that my side needs to be talking about that a little more aggressively, and that policy nuance on healthcare isn't going to be the way to do it. Now, granted, I believe with all of my heart that one of the tenets of campaign politics is I use my wallet every day,
right.
But you got to be swinging for the fences, I think, on this stuff. If you're when else are we ever going to be able to push through the kind of policies or as campaign tools that we want to push through, right? I left OWN in 2019. My healthcare premium was $600. It is now double that. 6 years later, 100%. I can afford it. But I think about just how everybody out there is dealing with this thing. And I don't think just another conversation about pre-existing conditions and taking the Medicaid money is going to do it this time.
So what does swing for the fences mean?
This swing for the fences means here's the thing. What have they been saying? What have the Republicans and their allies in corporate media been saying for the last 75 years about healthcare in other countries? Why can't we do single payer? Why can't we have government provided healthcare? Why is that, Matt?
Well, they are defending they don't want us to stand in line for one thing.
Exactly.
Like
Stand in line. Exactly. So I had I had a swollen saliva gland. Okay. And I had a CT scan on it, and I have a stone. And my doctor immediately was like, okay, it's not, cancer, but it can keep hurting. So I'll do a referral to you for ear, nose, and throat immediately. And this is treatment through UW Hospital, right? I called to get into ear, nose, and throat, May. So we're all waiting for lines. If you have a kid who has mental challenges, try and get them a new psychology appointment. We are all waiting in line. Yeah. We are all waiting in line. So their points are garbage again.
Or dermatology too. You can wait 6 months for that.
Right. They told me, they were like, oh, you need to get your annual physical, which I haven't had since the blah, 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 since the teens. And I was like, okay, cool. Okay. We have one in 8 months. It's that thing of every claim that Republicans make on public policy issues turns out to be a lie. Right. And yet it's argued in the media as though it's debatable. And that's what I'm saying is that if you're going to talk about affordability, which I think the Democrats are really doing a partially good job at, go for what really would make a difference. That these bills that slather, that hold people to lousy jobs because they can't afford to lose 1 month's pay because of the healthcare bills, because of their student loan bills, because of their high housing cost bills, because of their child care bills, all those sorts of things. If we don't try and, if we don't offer solutions to that stuff, it ain't going to happen. People aren't going to why would I vote for incremental change? You say the other side's crazy, but you're asking for an inch and I need 4 feet.
Right. We need the mile. You've been listening to Scott Ross. I'm Matt Rothschild, subbing in here on Afternoons with John and Gordy. I'm going to try to keep Scott a little longer after the break here, and we've got Angela Lang coming in to help join the conversation. You can join the conversation at 855-752-4842. That's 855-75-CIVIC, and we'll be right back.
92.7 WMDX. Less noise, more nuance.
Hello.
Hey, Angela, you there?
Muted right now.
Yep, obviously. Yeah, because today has been a day, unfortunately.
We were going to send out the Canadian Mounties. But...
I mean, despite it being vacation, there's always something happening, unfortunately. Life just doesn't stop. But
Life
hey,
as an
Scott.
executive director.
I know, clearly. So sorry, I wish I could have been here earlier. But I heard the last part with Scott. As usual, I've known Scott for a while, so it doesn't surprise me that he is being very honest right now. So.
Oh, yeah. I love the way Scott talks. So.
Agreed.
Hey, Angela, how are you?
I'm good. I was just saying, I appreciate how you're always honest in all of the conversations, including in radio as well.
Well, thank you.
How you been?
Thank you. I've been all right. You know, I got nothing to complain about, you know. Yeah. Yeah, things are good. Things are good. How about you?
You know, the world's on fire. We're trying to hang in there one day at a time.
Right on. What can I control? What can't I control?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a big thing. Yep.
You know?
Where do you want to go in the next segment? Do you want to do Wisconsin? You want a governor's
sure.
race?
Let's go for it. Yeah. I did ask him to play The Long and Winding Road, which was the #1 song the day the Republicans took over control of the U.S. Supreme Court, June 9th, 1970.
All right. Oof.
But I won't go back into that too much. I'll just make it.
Yeah, there was so much ridiculous naivete on Justice Roberts. Give me a break. Oh, God. Yeah. He's always just been a polished hack.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I read Lisa Gray's book. It's pretty good.
Is it? I want to get a hold of it.
Yeah, she gave me a copy of it. Like, I was talking to her about something, trying to get her involved with something, with this thing about the Supreme Court. And she's like, oh, I wrote a book. It's about to, and she sent it to me, and I actually read the whole thing. I really liked it.
Yeah, I knew she was writing that book. So,
I wrote a play. Cool. Yeah. It's called The Senator Can See You Now. It's about whether or not a state senator, well, in the midst of a debate over a controversial $1 billion sports arena, a staffer contemplates a massive life change while teaching the local, the intern in the office lessons that you don't receive in college.
Oh, that sounds
lessons
great.
you don't receive in textbooks. Yeah. Well, I did it because, I didn't want to, I don't have neither party's identified, because the one thing they come together on is giving billionaires money to, fund sports arenas. So I didn't have to do that because I'd get preachy, if I ascribe party labels to, so.
Right.
Yeah, so I started writing.
Oh, that's fun.
I started writing it in October of 2023, but then I kept editing. It was like 250 pages, and I got it down to 59 now. But after the election, I was like, my gay romp about politics is not going to, be all that amusing. So, yeah. So it's just many, 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 many different iterations.
Are you going to get it
I'm trying to, yeah.
produced?
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Huh.
Let's see.
Cool.
I'm waiting to hear from Broome Street. I gave it to them. They were going to give me a call after the holidays and see what yeah. And then, so that's what I'm doing. I'm writing. I'd always, I was in politics because it's show business for ugly people, and I was too gutless to go to USC for film school. So.
You're looking good now, though. Nice beard, trimmed down. Yeah, healthy living.
Well, that's you have the luxury of not,
20 years
working.
is great. They give you a coin for that?
Yeah. Yeah, I keep it in my wallet.
Nice.
Yeah.
I admire that.
My sponsor is next week. He's having a party at Fitchburg. It's his 60th year.
Wow.
Yeah, here old school. He's the school they tore down to build the old school. I have a little poking him and doing him like that. When he got into the program, there were only 7 steps. And okay, one more. My sponsor's so old, both the Democrats and Republicans are trying to recruit him to run for president.
I remember you saying your mom was so poor she couldn't give me another tea at the end of the
that's
Scott.
why I couldn't. That's what I always wondered about that. So the word Scott. Somebody writes. So someone's like, yeah, let's use the word Scott, and they're like, no. Because it would have started with one T, and they're like, no, you're missing something, and they put a second T. They're like, stop drilling. You've struck oil. We needed the extra T.
All right,
20 seconds.
We should be quiet for 20 seconds.
the long and winding road that leads to
Hey, Matt
your
Rothschild with you.
door.
Welcome back to Afternoons with John and Gordy. The guys are off today, but I'm sitting here with Scott Ross, who has a reason for Aaron Zomers playing that great old Beatles song. What is that reason, Scott?
That reason is that when that song, the week that song came out, June of 1970, was the first day that the Republicans took control of the U.S. Supreme Court, and they have had it every day ever since the last 55 and a half years.
That's just unreal, isn't it, when you put it that way? Look, we're going to talk a little bit more about the stranglehold on power that Republicans have right now, the possibility here in Wisconsin that we might be able to change things here. And I wanted to bring in Angela Lang, my favorite co-host whenever I'm on, is joining us now. Angela, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm hanging in there. Last couple days, I guess, of the year, so it's kind of strange.
Yeah, and I was telling Aaron when we started the show today that I was still kind of buzzing after that great interview we had with Ruth Ben-Ghiat yesterday.
So good.
Yeah, she was just tremendous. She, of course, is the author of Strong Men from Mussolini to the Present, and Ruth Ben-Ghiat, this professor from NYU, has been warning us for 10 years now about Donald Trump, and she predicted, as few did, that he would not go gently into the night when he lost the election the first time around, and she was so right about that. We're also taking calls and texts at 855-752-4842, 855-75-CIVIC, if you're listening to us in your office or at your home or driving carefully and wanted to give us a call and we'll take it. But I wanted to talk about the race for governor here in Wisconsin. And Scott Ross, first to you, what you make of the Democratic field.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of good candidates who are running. I think that right now, nobody's really paying attention. That's the thing, and that's that sort of adage that they, like that I was taught, which was like, don't underestimate the intelligence of the voters, but never overestimate their interest in politics. And people are struggling so much under this, Trump, money suck. I don't know. Is there an official name for like the fact that nobody can afford anything under this guy other than billionaires?
Money suck. It's an oxygen suck.
It's exactly all that, right? Like what's the next shiny ball? Like literally every day, it's about distracting us from the economics of this thing. And I always say, like, in campaigns, number one thing, I use my wallet every day. Everything needs to come back to economics, and it can in some way. And that's where I think the advantage that Democrats have in this race is that they can be out there talking about some really big and bold ideas that are going to change the state of Wisconsin. Governor Evers has been in there almost 8 years. He has provided a great backstop to preventing a lot of terrible things from happening, that would have otherwise, annihilated the state. But, with one bad election, we could be back to where we were in 2011 and how terrible it is. And so I think it's beholden on the Democrats to do two things. One is to make sure that they are attacking the presumptive nominee for the Republicans, Tom Tiffany, every single day in the media. Say what you want, but the majority of voters still get their news from the regular corporate news media, whether it's TV or newspapers or whatever. And that helps drive the coverage of what goes on. So they've got to be aggressive in getting criticisms, policy differences, corruption, fealty to Trump, everything about Tom Tiffany, because this guy, let me just say this about Tom. Tom is a paper tiger. He's had one race in his whole life against somebody, like back when he was in the legislature, he ran against Jim Halpern and got smashed. It was only after there was like nobody really running against him that he got from state assembly to state senate to the U.S. Congress. And since there's literally no coverage, out in the sticks of anything related to Congress, except like your local paper may hear the Republican congressman on, public radio and do some stenography on his points there, right? There's no kind of pushback, and there's no organized pushback of communications outside of Madison and Milwaukee, maybe anywhere. So you have to show the differences, and then you have to show a sense of strength.
And Tiffany is just mini Trump right now. That's what he's running as.
Oh yeah, no, I mean this guy, and again, this guy's a clown. He's got like baggage, as long as my leg.
More baggage than O'Hare, I like to say.
Oh, very good, very good. So yeah, so I mean, again, that's the thing. The turkey's on the table for the Dems if they want to retain the governorship. The economy's terrible. You know, the incumbent party is running things. You know, you got ICE disappearing human beings.
Right.
You know, with Tom Tiffany's full endorsement. Tom Tiffany is an election denier who tried to overturn the results of a democratically decided election in 2020. Like, he is the guy you want to be running against. It'll be up to the Democrats to decide whether or not they're going to run the race in order to win or to not lose. You know, and there's two differences with that. Not lose is listening to your DC pollsters. You know, let's play it easy. Let's play it safe. You know, there's not, you know, you're not, you know, we have to, like, you know, make sure we, you know, try and spend all of our money talking to that tiny little 2% in the middle that might decide this election, or growing your base and with enthusiasm. You know, their side does that. Our side doesn't. I would say this one last thing. Sorry. You know, when Republicans, the way that I see polling approached is on the Republican side, they're like, we want to cut taxes for the rich. Do a poll and show us how we talk about that. And on the Democratic side, it's like, poll 10 issues, and whatever the top 3 are, that's what we'll talk about. And it's just garbage. You know, you got to run your values. You got to run on what matters to the people, and you have to do it in a way that shows strength. So, because if you don't seem strong, I'm not going to believe that you're going to get it done.
And so how do you grow that base with enthusiasm? How do you show that strength?
Well, I think there's a couple ways. You know, one, I think you have to, like, call out some of the failure. You know, you have to empower people to see that you've learned from some of your mistakes. You know, and that's where, like, I do wish somebody in the Democratic primary here, and I know it's not exactly, you know, I've written more concession speeches in primaries. It is a skill set on my resume, you know, but, like, I just think somebody has to. There is a pot of people out there who like Democratic values, but are disgusted with the Democrats in D.C. right now. And nobody has said, we need new leadership in D.C. I mean, I'm 56 years old, right? Chuck Schumer is 18 years older than me, and I can't imagine going every day to be the leader of fighting Republicans at that age. I'm sorry, I just can't imagine it. And, like, friends of mine will say, oh, you're ageist. No. Kevin Powell taught me on The Real World that racism is race plus power. Ageism is age plus power. And the boomers have controlled the White House since 1993. So the last 32 years, they've had the power. So, Chuck, get out the pool. Just like I'm a lifeguard.
Yeah, well, I'm for that, too. I mean, it's time for new leadership for sure. I want to bring in a caller, and you can join the conversation if you're listening. That's Scott Ross, by the way, talking, and I'm Matt Rothschild. We're subbing in for John and Gordy right now. Angela Lang is co-hosting with me, and Scott's with us till the top of the hour. Number to call, 855-752-4842, 855-75-CIVIC. We've got a call from Kurt in Madison. Aaron, if you'll put him on, that'd be great.
Scott, I love the passion. One of the people I listen to on and off, I definitely listen to on Wednesdays, is Tom Hartman, because he has Mark Pocan on. And people will call in, and they always complain about messaging and all these other things. And you know, I like Mark. I've gone out and got signatures for anything, but he lacks the passion. He better figure out why we're all lost our patience with him and others like him, because we don't see anything going on. I'll give you an example. He says, Mark says, I'm really tired of everybody, you know, bringing up the issue that of we don't know how to message. And he said, I'm open for any ideas or suggestions for someone that can, you know, help us out. So I called. I had to keep send in, and luckily I got in. I said, hi, Mark, this is Kurt, Madison. I said, well, I got an idea. How about digital billboards, newsprint, radio? How about all these things? And he said, and I quote, oh, yeah, we've discussed billboards. We're working on that. Well, I look online. I haven't seen a single billboard.
Yeah, I mean, one thing about that, though. I mean, and again, I will, Kurt. I put my cards on the table. Like, I've been voting for Mark Pocan since 1998, and I am proud of every vote I cast for him. And I think he is one of the best strategists in the state of Wisconsin. And I think that, you know, if the Democrats take control of Congress, that would be very, very good for us in Wisconsin because of the fact that we'll have a champion like Mark Pocan there. So I don't have anything. I can understand your frustration and tactics of what are the ways in which we should be communicating people. But the one thing I won't do is criticize Mark. And I think, I won't speak, Angela's over in Milwaukee. We're here in Madison. Like, that is the one thing we do have in Madison and Milwaukee is two great members of Congress who really do fight on behalf of the people of Wisconsin. But maybe, Angela, I'm just curious, like, what are you hearing about, over in Milwaukee? What are you hearing about dissatisfaction or inspiration or whatever is going on with, sort of what do Democrats need to do?
And thanks, Kurt, for the call, by the way.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it because I do think that this is a really strong point of the conversation is that you have folks that are on the inside, however well we are on the inside, that we understand how things work. But then you have the public, and sometimes there's a disconnect between the two. I think a lot of folks, at least in Milwaukee, Congresswoman Gwen Moore is beloved. Like, people put her on literature to help the top of the ticket. That's how much beloved she is. But that's not to say that people don't have their criticisms. And I actually, a couple weeks ago, attended a protest from Peace Action Milwaukee that wanted to, ask the Congresswoman to make sure that she is signing on to a bill that stops bombs to Israel, right? And I was there. It was incredibly cold. It was 20 folks, all from Peace Action. And they were reading this letter, and they were in the letter, they even said, you have been a champion for families, but this is what we want to see. And so I think to answer your question, Scott, is that people, I think in Milwaukee can be critical because I don't think anyone is perfect, but I think there's that long-term analysis of this person has been fighting. They've been a champion. They've been a champion for working families. And yes, we're going to call them out publicly, but we're going to do it in a way that shows, that we have been committed to them as a candidate and as an elected official too.
I think that's great. And I always say anybody who agrees with me 100% of the time needs to first and foremost have their head examined. We're just not going to agree on everything. But yeah, that's where, I think that's where it goes is that how can we build, that's one of those things that the Republicans have tried to do with us. Divide us by, because again, everything about the Republican Party now is about race. It is about dividing us on race and pretending that outstate in Milwaukee are treated completely and totally different. Well, they are in the sense that, our legislators try to punish Milwaukee more, but it doesn't matter what zip code you have in the state of Wisconsin, the Republicans are not looking out for you. I don't care where you're from, And again, it's that thing of we can't. I think one of the failings of the Democratic Party is its inability to talk about race in a way that's, productive and, isn't I'm always going to be afraid of the people who I'll never get. There are just some racists out there and you ain't never going to have them. So why are you trying to coddle them? And I that's I'm trying to think of, I lost my point, but that's, again.
So we're just wasting too much energy chasing people who will never come around.
Exactly, right? It's you got to fish where fish where the fish are. That's what targeting is about. Fish where the fish are, and if you show strength, people are going to want to be with you. And if you show compassion, people are going to care about that. If you show weakness, vote for the other guy or woman.
That's Scott Ross talking. I'm Matt Rothschild, co-hosting with Angela Lang on Afternoons with John and Gordy because the guys are off today. We'll be right back after this break to carry on with this conversation. You're invited to join by calling or texting 855-752-4842. 855-75-CIVIC. We'll be right back.
Don't keep me waiting here. Lead me to your
Real news, great conversation right to your inbox. Subscribe to the WMDX newsletter and never miss the stories right here in Madison. WMDXradio.com.
Hopefully you're having a joyful holiday decorating the tree, stringing the lights, and celebrating with the people you love. When the holidays wind down, give your unwanted lights and electronics a second life by recycling them at URT's Madison drop-off locations at 4602 Sycamore Avenue or 402 South Point Road. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday from 7:30 a.m. till 2:30 p.m. Swing by when it's convenient, recycle responsibly, and help keep the community bright. Happy holidays from URT.
Hey, honey, how was your day?
Yours?
Pretty good. Guess what? The boss asked me to find a place for the holiday party this year.
Oh, I know a place that'd be just...
Yes, right here. We think so alike.
No,
we can
wait,
put some
wait.
effects.
No, not
what?
our house. Sugar River Pizza. You already
well,
told them they could be here, didn't you?
Yeah,
I'm
well-
sure you thought catering from Sugar River would be just fine.
Sure.
Yeah, but you've seen that huge room in the back of the Sugar River Pizza at their Sun Prairie location.
Yes.
It's ideal for a holiday party.
Well, yes.
Fabulous pizza, that pulled pork you love, pasta, soup, sandwiches.
Yeah.
Anyone can get exactly what they want.
And it's better than your meatloaf. Well,
Wait,
let me
wait,
call
what?
them.
What'd you just say? You said you like my meatloaf.
I did. No, Sugar River Pizza in Sun Prairie. That is a great idea. You're brilliant. Thanks, hon.
Plan your next office or holiday party with Sugar River Pizza in Sun Prairie. Get to sugarriverpizza.com/catering to book today.
What exactly is wrong with my meatloaf?
I like it. Most of the time,
Wait,
it's pretty
most
good.
of the time?
Well, most
Pretty
yeah,
good?
Kind of, yeah.
CVS Health supports people in the moments that matter, from picking up a prescription to connecting care. With nearly 5 million daily interactions and serving 185 million consumers and 1.5 million healthcare professionals, CVS Health holds a trusted place in healthcare.
Hey, Angela.
Yep.
I was going to ask you, because he just brought up Joel Brennan. I was like, the biggest thing, like the white money that doesn't like David Crowley in Milwaukee's candidate.
I mean, that's also a thing, right? Like, I feel like
Yeah.
you can't talk about, governor or any statewide office without talking about like the weird dog whistle of being a black candidate, and that comes with money or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I dig, and obviously it's not the same thing, but like my the first two statewide races I worked for were the first woman to run for governor in our history, Kathleen Falk, and the first woman run for Attorney General, Peg Lautenschlager, because I went to work for Peg after Kathleen lost the primary. And like, I just remember being in editorial boards where at one point I just slapped my hands on the desk and was like, it was with Peg, and she had all this prosecutorial experience, and the other guy had been a DA, and she had been a DA, U.S. attorney, and like the corrections person. I'm like, what more does she have to have? It was the Appleton Post-Crest, and I slammed my hands on the desk and said that.
Well, that's awesome.
Yep.
We're on in 20.
Yep.
Hey, welcome back to Afternoons with John and Gordy. I'm Matt Rothschild, subbing in for John and Gordy, along with Angela Lang. You guys are off today, and we're always happy to sub in when needed, coming in from the bullpen. And we've been enjoying a conversation with Scott Ross, who used to be head of One Wisconsin Now, and now is a commentator on Here and Now on Wisconsin Public TV. And before the break, Scott, you were talking about Democrats here in Wisconsin needing to get beyond the advice of Washington pollsters and campaign advisors who just kind of parachute in here, don't really know the terrain, but tell the candidate what to do. And to me, the starkest example of that was when Mandela Barnes was running last time, and they ran those ridiculous peanut butter and jelly sandwich commercials, which I just couldn't stand. I hope he's getting beyond. He's got new ad people this time around.
Yeah, I mean, I am particularly, I'll admit, I am particularly knowledgeable about this because I don't eat lunch meat. So the only sandwiches I've ever eaten in my life are peanut butter and jelly. And I did not appreciate the way he spread the peanut butter on that thing. I don't know if they use
it's
Skippy.
controversial.
I don't know if they use Skippy or what, but Jif glides on, in like a great descending 747 in perfect weather. But yeah, no, I mean, that's, again, like think about some of the things that have been run in Wisconsin over the last election cycle. We had ads, we had outside groups that were doing ads on, we're going to give some, Biden got some seniors $35 insulin, and, let's talk about the farm bill again. And what was the other one? Oh, lead pipes. People expect those things, again, it's so small ball. We need to have it, again, I don't know that you can educate people in campaigns. That's what they say. So you definitely can't educate them on these tiny little small things. Like I'm sorry, but how does some seniors getting insulin for $35 benefit, help drive my message? And again, you've got to, if you want to turn them out, you got to turn them on, That's the, and Yeah, I just, whatever, give you one example. Like my organization started talking about student loan debt back in 2008.
Yeah.
2008 was our first one.
Yep.
And the reason we did that was because there were, at that time, like 39 million people with student debt. I was one of them. I had like $64,000 worth of it. And I said, like, I've got this monthly reminder of how screwed I am, because I can't buy a home. In my life, I've had 3 cars. My entire life, I'm 56 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I got a house, finally at the age of like, what's 2037? I got a little condo.
Yeah,
and
the average age now is 40.
Yeah, right. And we're denying people, the ability to achieve their dreams because they've got this monthly sentence. And what happened? Biden actually did something good. He said, we're going to try and forgive $10,000 or $20,000, whatever it was, of student loan debt. And like rather than embrace that for the 45 million people who Democrats could have locked in their pocket for the like Roosevelt Democrats, they said, oh, we've got some people in our district, Derek Van Orton saying you're going to make me pay for, somebody else's college. Well, that's nuts because we used to pay for it all the time anyhow. Mm-hmm. The fact is that, we've decreased the amount that we spend in higher education, whether it's tech colleges or regular college and university. We put that burden on the, and again, you got to turn people on to turn them out.
You mentioned Derek Van Orden. What is the prospect of defeating him in 2026?
I mean, here's the thing. Derek Van Orton is a January 6th terrorist insurrectionist, and I have not seen him take a shot about that from the campaigns that are running against him for at least 3 years. And that's insane because don't tell me that January 6th isn't on the minds because it was the attempted coup of our government, the basic tenet of democracy was taken away. They attempted to take it away and he participated in it. And you know what? Here's the thing. If you put him on the defensive, he can't talk about how you're going to open the border, quote unquote, talk about an issue that the Democrats blew. They should have been 2 years ago, hey, the border ain't any better than it's been for the last 50 years, and it ain't worse. This is just about your Fox News August caravans being started in April of the year before. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just garbage, Because immigrants make the country great.
Well, the stereotyping on immigrants, the scapegoating on immigrants, it's just been horrible to watch. Just a playbook out of Goebbels.
Well, hey, Matt, don't you be criticizing the Republicans. Otherwise those cry bullies will come after you. That's the thing. Like, that's what they are. They're cry bullies, and everybody should be using that term. I think it's the perfect term for their mass victimization. The rich guys in charge, like Peter Thiel and David Sachs and Elon Musk, 3 apartheid South Africans, billionaires who run our government, are crying because they're being attacked. I mean, that's lunacy, these cry bullies. Ugh.
Cry bullies is great. Yeah, I've been reading a book called Gilded Rage about the tech bro billionaires who feel so put upon because everyone in the country isn't singing their praises constantly.
Oh, good Lord.
And now they're in power. One final tip do you have for us or for the Democrats about how to campaign in this upcoming season in 2026?
I would say believe in what you're saying and don't be afraid to say it. And put yourself in the mind of the person who's struggling, because most voters are struggling economically. And they don't want to hear inside baseball about how we might have a trifecta. Who the hell knows what that is? Talk about how I'm going to get in there and make sure that Republicans are stopped from doing X and that I am going to do Y to make your life better. And I will not stop fighting until I get you Y.
Yeah, that getting over the inside baseball, getting over the jargon and talking directly to people about their everyday needs. And also, they want the democracy to function. There's all this stuff about don't use the word democracy. I don't buy that for a minute either. Scott Ross has been our guest. Scott Ross is formerly head of One Wisconsin Now and appears currently on Wisconsin Public TV show Here and Now. It's great to see you again. Thanks so much for all you gave us over the last hour.
Oh, thank you both for having me. It's been great to talk to you, Angela and Matt.
And we'll be back after this break. Angela Lang and me, Matt Rothschild, subbing in here for John and Gordy on the Civic Media Radio Network. We'll be right back with Jim Santel, and we'll be talking about courts and decisions of the judiciary, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So stay tuned for that.
Sit down and patch my bones and get back trucking. Come on, come on.
This is 92.7 WMDX.
Hey, Angela, great talking to you.
You too. Take care.
Yeah, totally. I leave in a couple weeks. I will be gone till April.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well,
Yeah,
safe
I
travels and
I live in Valencia, Spain, in the winters.
I don't blame you. I'm kind of
Right?
jealous.
He's
but
no fool, right? I mean,
love
it's,
that for you.
Right? I got lucky. All right. See y'all.
All right.
All right.
Have a good
see
New
you,
Year's.
Scott. Happy New Year.
You too.
Well, I'm glad I got you before you left. I love the energy.
Scott always
Spain.
brings that.
Spain sounds good right about now, doesn't it? Right?
Doesn't it?
Right, Angela? Right?
That sounds
Yeah.
so good.
little plane over a big ocean, and then you're in Spain, right?
As I watch the snowfall from my window, and I
yes, look at that. Oh,
haven't been to Spain, but I can imagine they have really good food, and that's one of the things that I'm dying to go there for.
Yes, yeah. Well, I think that Civic Media should buy you a ticket. And
I can do some on the ground
news.
reporting. I'll find some folks. I'm an organizer. I'll find the show topic.
A month in the Mediterranean coast there, and just you can dart over to Italy and France every so often. And I think we need a foreign correspondent, don't we? Just
I think so.
just outside, actually, doing a little bit of snow shoveling since I'm not there with you, which I'd planned to do initially, Matt. But I'm sorry about the change in plans. But we'll do that again sometime, right?
Yeah, and I saw your message in the chat about Abrego Garcia's case. I actually just saw too. I think the last couple days he's on TikTok, and he came up in my For You page, and I was like, is this him? And then people were like, whoa, this is him. He's on TikTok now. So I found that very interesting.
And kind of, I don't know if you're going to chat about it on air, but kind of mixed feelings about that. It's one of those things. And I think what he's doing is, it's apparently a Spanish prayer. I think that's what it is. And it's got some musicality to it and that sort of thing. So it's nothing offensive. But of course, if you're defense counsel, you just want to have your client quiet, right?
I was going to say, I was like, oh, great, good for him. And then I was like, oh, I'm not a lawyer, but I feel like if I was, I'd be like, no, get off the internet.
Let other people do that, right? This is the advice that, again, obviously Donald Trump, our president, never takes. But, not that I would ever be in the Oval Office with him, but if I had one recommendation, I would consistently say to Mr. President, I know you're angry. I know you think these people should be killed. Be quiet.
Get off the internet.
Be quiet. And frankly, even if we do get to, we can take this wherever you like, but if we do get to chat again about, Comey and James and all those other things, it's so fascinating as a legal and just a civics matter that he and things he has said is the very reason why these prosecutions are in trouble. Because he has said the things that he has said, they're in jeopardy because of things. If you just be quiet, and the department would just indict these folks, and he's giving breadth and life to all this vindictive prosecution. And I think both cases are gone now, but they should somehow resurface. He is going to be, and what they're doing is, it's fascinating too. The motions that they have filed, they're nothing but 50 pages of recitations about how much he hates James Comey. That's all you have to argue, right? It's coming from Donald himself. Mr. President, be quiet, right? But no, that will never happen.
That'd be great for everyone involved.
Right. Yes, right. Yeah. A little boring would be good, right? Right.
Yeah.
I don't want to see his face or even listen to his voice at this point.
Can we do 3 more years of this? I mean, even putting aside all the substance and all the lack of substance, but oh my gosh, that speech he shouted, was it 10 days or so ago? I mean, I watched it and thinking,
it was weird.
What is this?
I was watching it. I was like, why is he yelling at me? Like, I mean, I understand who he is, but I was like, what is happening?
Yeah. I know. My wife Jean was listening. She just said, that guy's a maniac. That was
right.
That's exactly
how the people have got to be in the room there right behind the camera thinking, okay, I got to go home tonight and here, and talk with spouses or partners about what I did today, and they'll say, "Were you there?" Yeah, I was. Didn't you stop him? No, I didn't. Right? So craziness.
I mean, back in the day, once upon a time, I used to run campaigns. And as a campaign manager, when your candidate went off script, the amount of internal anxiety, or like, that's not what I wrote. And then so I always think about that. I'm like, how is campaign team just like knowing that he is not going to read whatever they prepared for him? He's going to go off script and say all sorts of other things. And that itself, as a behind the scenes, staffer, is just anxiety inducing in and of itself.
Right. And you got to think, Angela, at some point you've got to go to the candidate and say, listen, I'm supporting you. I love to do this. I can't do this anymore if we're consistently departing from what I prepared for you. I'm doing the strategy. I'm putting this all together.
20 seconds.
Yes, and so you are, Angela, right? And then you go out there and you destroy it, right?
I guess we should be quiet for a sec.
All right, here we go. Yep.
And if you want to, I think I may have sent you a note. If you want to chat a little bit about.
But my eyes still see.
Hey, Matt Rothschild with you on Afternoons with John and Gordy, because the guys are out today on vacation, and I'm here with Angela Lang. She is the co-executive director of Block, Black Leaders Organizing for Communities. Angela, I want to thank Scott Ross once more for being such an energetic guest over the last hour here on the program. I wish I could bottle his energy and sell it. He was terrific. You can join the conversation if you'd like by dialing 855-752-4842. That's 855-75-CIVIC, because we're on the Civic Media Radio Network. It's snowing out here in Madison, all across the state of Wisconsin. People are going to be getting 1 to 2 inches, so drive carefully on this commute home tonight. The roads could be a little dicey, so be aware of that and be careful. We want you to be safe, especially during the holiday here. Now we're thrilled to have as our next guest Jim Santel. He's the host of Amicus, a law review, the indispensable weekend show he does for Civic Media on the most important court cases going on in the country. And it's been a real busy year on that front. Jim, welcome to the show.
Matt, Angela, so good to be with you once again. Probably the last time we'll gather together in 2025. So lots of things to talk about. We've got 3 or 4 more hours yet this afternoon, right? Before we smoke everything. That's the plan.
I wish I could go for a while longer, but no, we're just good to 5. But,
right.
I mentioned your name earlier, Jim, because I was talking about the people who have helped me get through this year with their writing or their speaking, and you were one of them. I just can't praise you enough for the work that you do on Amicus Law Review. It's really so clear the way you lay out the legal issues that are before us, the challenge, the threat that Donald Trump has posed to our constitutional system. So just want to thank you again.
I appreciate that comment so very much, and I will humbly accept it. People always tell people like us, right, just accept the compliment and move on. But I will tell you that one of the things that, again, it's a part of the world in which we live. There was a time in our recollections, all 3 of us, our lives, and I suspect most of our listeners, when you didn't have to know how many people were on a federal grand jury, right? You didn't have to know what a motion to suppress really is all about. And yes, you understood the 4th Amendment, and yes, 2nd Amendment, 1st Amendment, all those concepts. But the nitty-gritty, concepts of now vindictive prosecution and all these kinds of things, and even things coming out of Eastern Virginia these days. What is it that a U.S. attorney does when she or he presents cases? We never needed to have to know that, nor should we have to know that, because it is one of those kind of wonky down the rabbit hole things. Now, in order to understand the world in which we live, and this, again, I appreciate so much your comment, we need to understand more of that. And so the commentary with the 2 of you and other presentations here on Civic Media just hopefully informs people so that when they hear things that sound wrong, they can identify them as being wrong for these particular reasons and knowing more than they ever had to know before we had this administration.
And Jim
I I
Go ahead,
appreciate
Angela.
folks that are doing this legal work, because I joke around and I'm like, I'm not a lawyer. I just like to argue. So I like pretend I'm a lawyer sometimes. But you're right. Like, it's been a lot. I find myself Googling, like, is this legal? Is that legal? In a way that I haven't ever had to before. And I think there's something to be said for you bringing up that point that there was a certain amount of like trust in the judicial system, that people didn't have to have a legal, degree or a law degree or any type of understanding in order to make sense of what's happening right now.
Yeah, and Angela, to continue with that point for just a moment, there's a thing that we talk about, and it was on news again recently, called the presumption of regularity. And it really is about the Department of Justice. When I was a prosecutor for 30 years or so, there was a presumption that when you went in front of a judge for a search warrant, for a criminal complaint, when you returned an indictment, when you're arguing on motions, when you're appearing in front of a court or a trial, a jury trial, that, again, the Department of Justice did not get a pass on things, but there was a presumption that if I said things in court, that it was true, and that I was accurately representing what the facts were. And if I didn't know, I said, Your Honor, I don't know, let me find out. That presumption of regularity, and what, again, there's a point to what we're connection to what we're just saying here, that even the American public could count on, whether it was a Bush administration or a Obama administration, Department of Justice attorney, when you went in, you might have different policy views, but you knew that they were basically telling you the truth. And they were not lying to you, and they were not deceiving and telling judges something other than what the case is. And so America could say, okay, we can also rely on that. Presumption of regularity is now gone. And we're seeing it just this week. We've got a fellow named James Boasberg. He's a federal district court judge in Washington, D.C. You know what he's doing? He's having to spend his time. He's just made these findings previously that the government has been in contempt. He's trying to determine who exactly lied to him in March when he said, bring those planes back, tell the pilots to return them to America. And he is having these hearings about who is it, the attorney general, the deputy attorney general, is the attorney appearing right in front of who not just did not misunderstand the message, failed to pass it on, failed to accomplish what a judge was saying. That's contempt. And that's what Americans previously, it happened every so often, it's out there. Attorneys on all sides of the situations would be horrified if a judge were to say, Mr. Santa, I'm going to hold you in contempt. That was not unheard of, but just, it was an extraordinary thing. Now we've got federal judges who cannot rely upon what your Department of Justice is telling them anymore at the end of 2025.
I mean, Jim Santel, it is crazy. I mean, not only are they lying in court, lying to the judges, they're disobeying court orders. And so that calls into the question the whole constitutional order, because the judge's orders, the judiciary is supposed to have the last say on what's constitutional. And if they're not following that, we've got a renegade administration here.
Right. And I think for myself, not everyone, not all your listeners will agree with this, but I mark our constitutional crisis from March 15th. And that is the time the Department of Justice, again, began to tell James Boasberg things that weren't true. Right across the river, we've got another judge named Paula Zinnes. She is the one who's handling the civil immigration matter regarding Abrego Garcia, which we'll talk about in just a moment or so ago. You know what she has said this week? She has looked at the Department of Justice attorneys. We're trying to figure out whether or not she should continue to monitor the case, or whether it goes back to the immigration judges to do this. And she looks at them and she basically says, why would I trust you? Why would I rely upon your representations that this is an appropriate thing to do when your history before me for the past 8 months has been just the opposite? That's an extraordinary thing for any federal judge to say to any Department of Justice. It's happening this week and last week. Stunning.
Jim Santel, talk a little bit more about the Abrego Garcia case and the news of the day.
Yeah, news of the day. This is big. We know that in addition to that immigration matter, civil matter, he is out on his own cognizance now appropriately, not a risk of flight, not a danger to the community. But we've also got this criminal case involving his alleged human smuggling in Tennessee. And I say alleged. He has not been convicted. Arguably, the indictment may be very thin itself, but it's in front of a judge named Crenshaw. And the judge scheduled a trial for January, meaning next month. That was on the docket for a long time here. And just last week, he made the first announcement, and today a second. I think it's a blockbuster thing that he has done. He's basically said, I'm taking the criminal trial off my calendar. Again, not unheard of, but very unusual. And instead, I'm going to entertain arguments that this prosecution also was the product of, let's all say it together, we know it too well, vindictive prosecution. And today, his order that Angela and Matt and you and others are digesting here releases this order, and he basically outlines the initial indications that, contrary to what the Department of Justice said, this was not just a local decision in the Middle District of Tennessee to charge him for crimes that were committed there, that people at Maine Justice were putting pressure on, maybe from the Deputy Attorney General's office, to prosecute this fellow. Now, that in of itself is not illegal, but it, again, represents a reversal of what the department has said, which is up to now, no. We had nothing to do with that decision locally. It was only the U.S. attorney and the assistant U.S. attorneys there who decided this case should be prosecuted. Now the judge has got information that wasn't true, and he scheduled a hearing on January 28th to determine whether or not he should dismiss the criminal case against Abrego Garcia because of prosecutorial misconduct. Again, the concept is not unheard of. It just continues. And Americans, again, I think they're appreciating the fact the Department of Justice is today unrecognizable. And that kind of thing, which repeats itself before Judge Zinnes, before Judge Boasberg, now before Judge Crenshaw, is not what Americans should anticipate from the Department of Justice.
No, not what we learn in civics either. We've got a call from Jack in Merrimack for you, Jim. So let's take the call, see what's on Jack's mind. Jack,
Hey, Jack.
are you there?
I'm here. Mr. Santel, I have a question and concept, at least. We have clearly got at least 5 Supreme Court justices, whatever they want to call it, gratuities or whatever, they're clearly on the take. This is corruption I have never seen or heard of in any Supreme Court in America in my lifetime, and I'm 80 years old. If we ever get control of Congress again and the White House, I've thought that we should have, when Biden was in his first couple of days in office, should have proposed expanding the court to 13 seats, 1 for each of the federal court districts, like it was the last time it was expanded, and also ramming through the Voting Rights Act, which is an absolutely critical concept of keeping our elections reasonably fair and honest. What's your opinion on that, please?
Thanks, Jack. So many good points. There's so much good material to unpack. Let me start at the very end there. Voting Rights Act, before this Supreme Court, Jack, as you know well, your listeners know well too, is now also again on the chopping block. We've got this case in determining whether or not Section 2 is constitutional. It may be that sometime in 2026, the final nail on the coffin. There have been 2 other cases previously set up for congressional fixes, but were never done. Now the Supreme Court may determine whether or not Section 2, which prohibits voting discrimination based upon race and language, maybe that's old, maybe that's antiquated, maybe that's unconstitutional, and they may make that decision sometime soon, Jack. So the specter you're identifying here is not unreal, and that's the real concern. The larger issue raised, also very, very problematic. Remember that Joe Biden did set forth, what does Washington sometimes do? Let's form a committee, right? And he did. There was a commission. They issued a report that kind of came to no real recommendations. But those are the big ones. You want to expand the court you do 11, you could do 13. Probably go beyond that, then you've got a kind of an unwieldy committee. But can you do that, Jack? You know this. The answer is yes. You don't have to have a constitutional amendment to do it. You can do it legislatively. Both houses of Congress get a president to sign off on it, increase the number, and begin to fill them. There's some other proposals, very interesting, in the Senate that basically would basically establish term limits, right? And there's pending legislation about that too. Lots of good things we need to think about.
That's Jim Santel. He does the Amicus, a law review show on the Civic Media Radio Network. I'm Matt Rothschild with Angela Lang, sitting in for John and Gordy on their show, and we'll be right back. You can join the conversation, 855-752-4842.
Hey, the harder they come, the harder they fall. One and all. Hey, the harder they come, the harder they fall. One and all.
WMDX, Madison's antidote to hot takes.
At Allure Intimate Apparel, fit is everything. Not just how something feels, but how it makes you feel. Bras, sleepwear, swim, and intimates, Allure has it all. Their industry professionals and trained fit specialists deliver a discreet, graceful experience that honors every figure. It's style without compromise, elegance without effort. Allure is thoughtfully expanding. Come visit their brand new Hilldale Shopping Center location, where women will discover how fit and confidence go hand in hand. Visit allurefits.com.
Green and Gold football is back at the Lazy Oaf Lounge. Catch the games on 14 large screen TVs. Join meat and jersey raffles at halftime during regular season games and enjoy half-price wings and beer bucket specials. And the Lazy Oaf is a great place for lunch with daily specials, soups made from scratch, and fast, friendly service. The Lazy Oaf Lounge, 1617 North Stoughton Road. Find specials, menus, and more at lazyoaflounge.com.
People are very concerned about the impact of marijuana, especially on young men, if they are heavy users. Does that alter the brain? Because there's been some research that says it leads to psychosis.
Is Representative Tom Tiffany right? Is there evidence linking marijuana use to psychosis? Yes. Research links marijuana use to psychosis, though causation isn't proven. A review of 32 studies found lifetime use raises psychosis risk, especially for adolescent users, who are 11 times more likely to develop psychotic disorders than non-users. Recreational marijuana is legal in 24 states, including Illinois, Michigan, and Minnesota. I'm Trisha Young for Wisconsin Watch. Fact briefs are bite-sized fact checks of trending claims produced by Wisconsin Watch and GigaFact. Read more at wisconsinwatch.org.
Snow, sleet, or sub-zero wind chills. Only in Wisconsin do we grow.
Get past the people, get past the hitman. Get on down tonight. I want to get on the
Hey, Matt Rothschild with you on Afternoons with John and Gordy. John and Gordy are on vacation today, so I'm guest hosting along with Angela Lang. She's the co-executive director of Black Leaders Organizing for Communities. Aaron Zomers is on the board as usual, and we have Jim Santel with us as our guest. Jim is the host of Amicus, a law review, which you can hear on the Civic Media Radio Network on the weekends. So we're talking about the courts and what they mean, and the Trump administration and the corrupt Justice Department's misuse of courts and embarrassing presentations before judges, lying before judges, disobeying court orders. You can join this conversation at 855-752-4842. That's 855-75-CIVIC. I want to thank Jack from Merrimack for that last call. And now we got John on the line. John, what do you got on your mind here?
Hey, John.
Yeah, hi, gentlemen, I'd like to talk about your new president, Trump, and about his war policy. Now, he took the name of Department of Defense and made it Department of War, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've been out since Vietnam. It's been 45 years, and we've been sitting pretty good. My dad fought in World War II, and my grandpa fought World War I. It's a peaceful time right now. What is he doing?
John, I want to thank you for that call. I mean, I agree with John. What Donald Trump is doing in Venezuela right now is illegal. It's unconstitutional. He's attacking another country. You can't bomb a port in another country. That's an act of war. There's been no declaration of war from Congress. Congress, under Article 1, Section 8, has the sole power to declare war. And also the seizing of oil tankers from another country, that's an act of war. The bombing of these boats is an act of war. And there's been no declaration of war. Even Rand Paul from Kentucky, a Republican, says this is not the constitutional system we're supposed to have. Jim, what do you think?
It isn't, and I see my friend Angela also shaking her head to the same point. It does raise the good question that the caller just raised. Where is the United States Congress, right? We talk a huge amount about the power the Supreme Court has, and I think we'll do that more in just a few moments or so. This unprecedented action by our president, basically legislating from the Oval Office with all these executive orders and simply doing things because he thinks he can. And I think about the Congress. Matt, you just made reference to the Constitution. Congress is what? It's the first article of the Constitution. And it's the big one. It's the fat one that has all the stuff in it, right? Why? Because James Madison and George Mason had this vision that they were going to be the big boys and maybe one day girls on the in Washington, right? And they should have the huge amount of power. They were the first, the executive power, the Federalist Papers say, basically the executive executes what the Congress does, and the courts, they'll mediate between those branches. That is not at all a description of what we've got going on today. Where is the Congress? Where's the oversight? Where's the screaming at the hair on fire about these kinds of things? Something this fundamental. And again, there may be a little hint that maybe the Supreme Court is kind of back on its heels a little bit with this tariffs thing, not related to, arguably related to Venezuela, but not directly. Maybe, just maybe, they're beginning to think that there is way too much power in this presidency and might, on tariffs, begin to send a message in the opposite direction. But we'll see.
Jim, you mentioned Madison. James Madison had a line when he was asked about why the president shouldn't have the power to declare war. He said, that's too much temptation for a man. And Trump is a man who indulges his temptations all the time. And we're seeing why James Madison was correct on that. We've got a call from Charles in Milwaukee. Why don't we try to sneak this call in before the break, Aaron, if we could?
Hi, Charles.
Hey, good afternoon. Good afternoon. I was wondering, with this whole thing with Donald Trump and him saying that Venezuela stole oil and stole land, is there any chance that when he met with the oil executives when he was running, that he promised them for a hefty amount of money in his pocket that he would do his best to get them that oil from Venezuela?
Mm-hmm. And Charles, this is why, if you had congressional oversight, if you had the capacity, which regrettably the Democrats do not have in either house, to issue subpoenas, not only for members of the government, but also for private individuals, summoning them in and asking them exactly the questions, Charles, that you've just asked. What happened? What happened a year and a half ago during the course of the campaign? What promises were made? You can do investigations through the United States Congress, even if the Department of Justice is moving away from that business. And so, yes, that's the kind of thing that should be asked if you had the power and if you had the will to do it.
I mean, what I'm hearing is Charles would be a better congressman than a lot of folks currently, is what I'm hearing. Asking those questions, right? Because I think a lot of us, and we were talking, a little bit earlier about how, a lot of folks just don't know the legalese and whatnot, but a lot of us in our gut are like, I don't know if that's legal, but we don't have like the legal jargon for it. And so I do think it's a failure on Democrats to not, push and to ask these very critical questions while democracy is being shredded in front of our eyes.
Right.
Yeah, I want to thank Charles from Milwaukee for that call.
Always, thanks, Charles.
Yeah, and there's nothing I want to put past Trump. So I don't know if it was a quid pro quo, but yeah, we need to find out. And we'll be right back.
It may well be that journalists and maybe historians will someday give us an answer to that question, right? We still are finding things out about prior administrations, good, bad, or indifferent. things do come out in history, but unfortunately, we won't know those things when they're mattering, right? When they matter right now.
Yeah, the sooner the better. I'm Matt Rothschild, co-hosting with Angela Lang. Our guest is Jim Santel, and we'll be right back with your calls. Jack, I see you're on the line. Just hang on after the break. We'll come right back to you. Number to call, 855-752-4842.
The only way I can take care of me, got to keep me together. Stay on the good foot. Stay on the good foot. I can deal with
WMDX Madison, the only station with more kayaks than callers. Our lakes are gorgeous. Just don't swim in them. 92.7 WMDX, keeping Madison honest, one broadcast at a time.
For Civic Media News, I'm Savannah Tomei Olson. We're lucky to have a network of reporters all over the Badger State, and here at the end of 2025, we're highlighting some of their best work. Isabella Nieto covers dam safety. We've got thousands of dams here in Wisconsin, and oversight helps keep them safe.
Both private owners and state or federal officials are responsible for keeping them in tip-top shape. I spoke to Uriah Monday, the state dam safety engineer. He says the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources is aware of roughly 5,000 dams that exist in the state.
Approximately 40% of the dams in the state are privately owned.
Monday says state officials have to make sure dam owners are complying with state standards for dam safety.
In a way, we're maybe like a building inspector in the community, right? We're not constructing projects and we're not running them, but we have a role in making sure that they are done in a sound and safe manner.
Congressman Tom Tiffany has made his experience as a dam tender a central part of his campaigns. Now he's running for governor on that same experience. But what does being a dam tender really mean?
For 29 years, I was the dam tender up on the Willow Flowage. I got paid to walk the dog every day down to the dam.
Monday says dam operators, as they're now called, are the custodians of the structure.
The misoperation of a dam can cause or exacerbate flooding. It might lead to further damage on the dam. In worst cases, it leads to a washout, right, a failure.
Monday also says if a dam owner is not in compliance with state laws, officials must negotiate with the owner to reach compliance. If that doesn't work, owners can face enforcement hearings or fines.
That's Isabella Nieto reporting from Wausau. I'm Savannah Tomei Olson. Thanks for listening to Civic Media News.
On your entertainment beat, I'm Pete Schwaba. If you plan to ring in the new year as a homebody, here are some film suggestions that are perfect for New Year's Eve. Holiday Inn from 1942 is an absolute classic that is actually set on New Year's Eve. In fact, the story is bookended by New Year's Eve holidays at an inn that is holiday-themed. The inn only opens during the holidays and sees a singer and dancer vying for the affections of a young up-and-coming starlet. The film stars Bing Crosby, Fred Astaire, and Marjorie Reynolds. It has a 100% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. You can also check out Happy New Year, Charlie Brown from 1985, which was rated by Good Housekeeping as the #1 viewing event on New Year's Eve. Always nice when you do your movie research and get tips on how not to let dust build up. Bonus. For more showbiz fun, tune in to Nightlight with me, Pete Schwaba, weeknights from 6 to 8 p.m. on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Your neighbors are talking. Leaders are deciding. Madison's story unfolds daily on 92.7 WMDX.
I'm meteorologist Mace Michaels. Clouds and flurries tonight, temps generally in the 20s and holding there through tomorrow afternoon with clouds and some snow showers. Colder as we look into New Year's Day, low 0 to 5 above, high upper teens. Cold again Friday, a little warmer for the upcoming weekend. Currently 21 degrees.
Reading aloud to children sharpens their listening skills, expands their vocabularies, and nurtures a lifelong love of reading. That's why Reading is Fundamental, the nation's leading children's literacy nonprofit, offers free monthly read-alouds by popular authors through its Rally to Read program. Visit rallytoread.org to watch the read-alouds and discover exciting reading activities for school and home. Visit rallytoread.org today.
Listen to the Civic Media exclusive podcast, Busted Pencils.
Our guest, Dr. Jonathan Gerko. Johnny, jump in there.
I think there was very little radical about Mamdani. Free buses, for example. I ride the bus. Very few people actually pay the fare today. And you're riding the bus to work.
Hey, welcome back to Afternoons with John and Gordy. I'm Matt Rothschild. Subbing in for them today, as is Angela Lang, my co-guest host today. And I just want to mention that it does look a little dicey out there with the snow, especially here in Madison. So be careful driving. There should be 1 or 2 inches all across the state pretty much starting right now. So be careful on your drive home, on your commute. The roads may be slick. So go extra slow. Get there safely. That's the important thing. We're talking with Jim Santel. Jim Santel is the host of Amicus, a Law Review, this great weekend show he does for Civic Media on the most important court cases going on in the country and in our state. You can join the conversation, 855-752-4842, 855-75-CIVIC. I want to thank Charles from Milwaukee for calling right before the break, and we've got Jack from Racine on the line right now. Jack, what question do you have for us?
Hey, Jack.
Hello, Matt and Jim. A little, as you left the conversation a while ago, you referred to the U.S. Supreme Court as being corrupt, and that's an interesting word. I looked it up the other day, and of course it has several meanings. I can think of some specific things that would make me think that possibly, but I was listening to Washington Week Friday evening, and the reporter from, they're all from the Atlantic, I think, who covers the judiciary and legal system, urged people very strenuously. It was quite a more heated or stronger remark than any they usually make on that show, how people have got to stop calling the court corrupt because people are going to lose respect for the court and lose respect for rule of law and think that we're not a rule of law society, which I thought, okay, yeah, probably, but I'm wondering what your thoughts were about using the word corrupt, Matt, and maybe Jim, you have a comment about that and about her overall thoughts. I mean, I have real concern for the legal system. It takes so many years with the delays in trials and things, particularly for some of these people we see at the federal level and national level today, that it just is ridiculous, and things are, there's not timely justice. No, that's one thought I have. But what were your thoughts about corrupt court?
Jack, thanks for the call. Jack from Racine. I call the court corrupt because Alito and Thomas were getting money from billionaires and flown all over the country on vacations and sitting on cases that the same vested interests were a party to. That's corruption. I think the Chief Justice is just a polished Republican hack. And so I call it as I see it. I'm not worried that I am going to cloud people's respect for this great institution. I think that's being naive. If we see the court as it is, which is a political instrument right now, and I don't think we should think otherwise, given the decisions they made, especially the immunity decision, God forbid. What else can you call that court? But I'll let Jim, who's the only lawyer on here, give his take.
And one doesn't need to be a lawyer, right, to come to that conclusion, right? And Jack, you're going to the dictionary. Corrupt is a broad word. I think Matt and Angela have it just right here, that corruption doesn't have to be, here's the white envelope with $1,000 and it passed across the dining room table, right? It can be all these things. And Matt, you got it just right, that on some of these ethics issues, it wasn't just a matter of taking the trips, which again, not reported, which again is a part of transparent government. That should be a part of it too. That's also corruption, maybe with a small c, but it's also the notion that with respect to some of those trips, people who are appearing in front of them or their corporations are there on cases that the very justices are deciding. that is fundamental corruption, right? And it is so unfortunate that, again, we came kind of close to having a true ethics code. And then the Chief Justice announced something. It was really an amalgam of all the other standards that they purport to abide by in the past. But here again, we come back to this notion of where is the Congress? And, Dick Durbin, again, our senator to the South, I understand he's not running for re-election here, head of the Judiciary Committee, had the capacity, and I admire him tremendously. He's a very bright man doing a lot of good work, had the capacity to subpoena the Supreme Court Chief Justice. Do it, Senator. And instead of just inviting him across the parking lot, subpoena him if he doesn't come, and seek enforcement of that, admittedly through the system, which may eventually get you back to the Supreme Court. But if the Supreme Court is not going to respond to this kind of corruption that we're talking about here, Congress has the obligation to do some oversight, Congress can establish the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court without a constitutional amendment. Congress can do all kinds of things. Do that and begin to ramp back on some of the overt problems that we have had that prompt us to think less about an institution that we should hold in high regard and should be far beyond this kind of conversation.
Angela, do you want to weigh in on this corruption either at the U.S. Supreme Court or at the Department of Justice?
Yeah, I mean, huge fan of the word. If we're going to call a spade, let's call a spade. And I know that may make folks feel uncomfortable, but that's not more uncomfortable than actually what's happening right now. But I'm also thinking too, like zooming out, like we're talking about the Supreme Court, and trust me, there is a lot of corruption, in my opinion, there and what's happening and what we're seeing with current events. But I also think about, as an organizer in the Black community, that there are folks that think of the justice system as one separate, entity as a whole, whether it's the local judges or it's the state Supreme Court or the federal Supreme Court. People kind of just lump that all in together. And so, I 1000% agree that the Supreme Court is acting in a way that appears corrupt, especially folks like Clarence Thomas and, all sorts of things like that. But then I also think about, if I were to have this conversation with my team and ambassadors or, average folks in the community, there are folks that would have said, oh, the criminal justice system or the justice system as a whole has already been corrupt because of what they've seen on an interpersonal level. So I'm very curious of like your thoughts, because, we're in the weeds of all of this, right? But understanding the average voter isn't. They just see any judge, whether it's a municipal court judge, state Supreme Court, or, U.S. Supreme Court judge, they see it as all a part of the same. And so I'm curious of how you think, too, of how this corruption kind of has a ripple effect overall about how people just don't trust, quote unquote, the system, no matter what angle it is.
Right. And when you've got a word like justice, I often point out that Department of Justice is the one federal agency that has for its name an aspiration, right? Justice. Yeah. We all hope to achieve that somehow, but it's very easy to lump it all together. And Angela, to your fantastic point, for your staff, your organizers, your community engagement affiliates there, it is another one of these situations where we've got to be attentive to how government works. And maybe in ways that we didn't always have to do in the past. The Department of Justice has this office called the Office of the Solicitor General. It's the person who appears in front of the Supreme Court advocating on behalf of the president. That's something that not a lot of people had to appreciate before, but now we do. And it goes to your very good point. Okay, what the Department of Justice still structurally, constitutionally is different from the Supreme Court. There's a connection there. The White House should also be separate from the Department of Justice. It is not anymore, which is a real break from every administration for 236 years until Trump 1 and now Trump 2. That's the kind of thing that people have got to appreciate. And that the concerns about justice, I agree with you entirely. When you look at the overall system and say it's all bad, that is sweeping too broadly, right? There are great judges here in Milwaukee and Madison, in Green Bay and Stevens Point, all over the place, and in the federal system as well. And there are good things going on. People are getting justice with a small j all the time in America. And yet now we're seeing, again, to use the word, corruption in various areas. it requires that you identify who the good people are who are still doing justice in various ways, whether they're judges or litigators, civil litigators, private attorneys, defense counsel, prosecutors, and folks at the Assembly, the Senate, Matt, right down the street there from where you are. There are good people doing these things. They're all part of a system. And now we are obliged as good citizens to figure out where those pockets of decency are and where they are not, and to make the distinction that you just made, Angela, which is got to be able to identify which is which. And then you need to go after those that need improvement. Not an easy task. We could rely upon basic government structures to keep that for the most part clean.
Yeah.
When I worked for Eric Holder, I can tell you stories about how no involvement at all with Barack Obama's White House ever in 8 years, right? And now we have just the opposite. So there's something you can identify as being problematic and work to change that. This is not, I'll say it again, this is not tradition. This is not usual. What we've seen the last 11 months is a departure, and it's exactly what prompts you, Angela, to come to that very good conclusion that you just have.
I mean, I think what's interesting too is that both Holder and Obama are like besties, right?
They
like
are.
I've met Holder several times. He's been in our office. He's a really great guy. Shout out to former AG Holder. And we used to ask him, we're like, did you ever play ball with Obama? And he was like, yeah, Obama couldn't play, right? Like all sorts of things. And I find that interesting that they are basically besties, but they had this firewall that you do not see anymore.
Right, absolutely, and talks about it all the time. I'll give you a very small anecdote. When I knew this for a long period of time, but when I became U.S. Attorney in the Obama administration, you get instruction. You go to U.S. Attorney school, right, like all things. And one of the things they said is this, Mr. Santel and 92 other U.S. attorneys, if ever you get a call from the White House and your assistant comes in and says, Jim, the president is on the phone, wants to speak to you. You know what the answer is? There's an answer to that. The answer is, I'm not taking the call. Even though this is the person who signed my certificate, this is the person who sent my name on to the Senate. And what I do is I pick up the phone right away and I call the Deputy Attorney General and say, whoa. The president is on the phone. And they then reach out and say, why are you calling Santel? Knock that off. That shouldn't happen. That's how strong that firewall we just talked about was and can be again, if you've got people inside both areas that are willing to again embrace justice in the way we used to think about it.
That's Jim Santel. He is the host of Amicus, a law review. He's speaking with me, Matt Rothschild, and my co-host Angela Lang on Afternoons with John and Gordy, because the guys are on vacation today. We will return just for a couple minutes with Jim Santel, and then I have a bird song to give you and a poem to give you. I can't do a show without doing both of those things. But I wanted Jim to think about this. You mentioned, there are good people out there, and I just want you on the return to say who has inspired you or which judges might have inspired you at this difficult time for our country, and how do we go? How have you found the energy to go forward? So if you could do that on the bounce back, that would be great. You're listening to Afternoons with John and Gordy. The number to call 855-752-4842, 855-75-CIVIC.
Oh, I wanna split now. I can't quit now. You really got a hold on me. Really got a hold on me. You really got a hold on me. Really got a hold on me. I love you, and all I want you to do is just hold me, squeeze, hold me, hold me. You really got a hold on me. Really got a hold. I said you really got a hold on me. Really got a hold. You know you really got a hold.
Holidays, headlines, and way too much eggnog. Happy holidays from Civic Media.
I'm hungry. What's cooking?
Oh, no, not me. It's your turn.
Oh, we're back to taking turns?
Yes.
Well, how about Sugar River Pizza?
Oh, yeah, now they can cook.
I could really go for some of that 12-hour smoked pulled pork.
Ooh, and some pasta. Okay, now I'm hungry. Sugar River, here we come.
And they have that great kids menu, too.
We don't have any kids.
Right. That's beside the point. The point is, I'm hungry, you're hungry.
Let's go.
Yes. And we should talk about having some kids.
Get in the car, Bob. Sugar River, Sun Prairie, Verona, New Glarus, and catering.
I love playing sports, especially for my school. And that's because school sports are special. It's where it's safe to fail. It's where we're taught resilience, where our fear becomes confidence. It's where we learn to get back up after every fall. School sports are where 7.8 million students go from I can't to I can.
This message presented by the WIAA and the Wisconsin Athletic Directors Association.
Looking to strengthen the bond with your pup? Dane County Humane Society offers a variety of dog training classes led by certified trainers. Classes are designed to help you and your furry friend learn new skills, improve behavior, and deepen your connection. Whether your dog is a curious puppy, an independent teenager, or a lifelong learner, DCHS has the tools and expertise to help you set the stage for a successful year ahead. Visit giveshelter.org/dog training to register today.
My name's John Driscoll, proud member of the Patriotic Millionaires. When I was CEO at CareCentrix, I doubled entry-level wages. The impact? Productivity went up, turnover went down, and the company was successful. When employees are off the clock, they're real consumers, the consumers that drive the economy with their spending. By paying employees a fair wage, we're actually helping out all of us in giving our economy the best chance to succeed. I'm John Driscoll, I'm a Patriotic Millionaire, and I approve this message.
I'm Rick Smith, host of The Rick Smith Show. If you're looking for honest talk, real stories, and straight-up news that matters to you, tune in to The Rick Smith Show. We're digging into the issues that affect your job, your family, your future. Join me weeknights at 9 on the Civic Media Radio Network, because your voice deserves to be heard. That's The Rick Smith Show, heard weeknights at 9 right here on the Civic Media Radio Network.
When a warrior faces adversity, he fights through it. He finds a way. Freedom isn't free. Rolling strong. Belief. Believe you can, and you will.
Wheelchairs for Warriors provides mobility solutions.
Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever have, redemption songs.
Love that, Bob Marley. I'm Matt Rothschild, subbing in here for John and Gordy, along with Angela Lang from Block. And our guest this hour has been Jim Santel, the host of Amicus a Law Review, which you can listen to on the Civic Media Radio Network on the weekends. Jim, right before the break, you mentioned that there are good people out there, good judges out there, pockets of decency. I just wondered if you wanted to salute one or two judges here in the next minute or two before we have to say goodbye.
I will just do this hopefully within a minute. I may identify 7 of them. You know, we think about the real lions right now, the icons who are on the court right now, folks like Ketanji Brown Jackson, Sonia Sotomayor, and Elena Kagan. We think, of course, about many other wonderful justices, Ruth Bader Ginsburg of the recent past. Let me go in a little different direction. When I came out of law school, I worked for a judge named Robert Warren. He was a district court judge. He was a Republican. He was appointed by Richard Nixon in his last hours in the White House. Today, Robert Warren, a former attorney general, former DA, he would be regarded almost in the left side of the Republican Party. He was a wonderful man. And that's the kind of person, regardless of party you want in these positions. Let me go back to the Supreme Court and also identify other people historically who've been important here. What about a guy named Anthony Kennedy? This is the guy who, again, joined with another icon, Sandra Day O'Connor. Conservatives on the court, right? The products of Republican presidencies, what did they do? They wrote opinions like Planned Parenthood versus Casey reaffirming the right to abortion. It was Kennedy who wrote Obergefell and Lawrence versus Texas that established what? You've got privacy rights in America, and that includes the right for same-sex marriage. Those are the kinds of people who, again, demonstrate in history now that just because you're conservative or liberal, wherever you are, doesn't mean that you're not going to do the right thing. I look to those people. Americans today should look to the Sandra Day O'Connors and the Anthony Kennedys, and yes, the Robert Warrens, to say, yes, it does matter a little bit politically, but in the end, it matters what you do and how you behave. Those are the people who are establishing our history today and for the future.
Well, thanks, Jim. That's Jim Santel for that wrap up and for your tremendous show, Amicus Law Review. Now, I just want to shift gears, as I do whenever I get a chance to get behind the mic here, and have a little salute for birds. And right now, there are great horned owls all across Wisconsin who are mating. And they make a lot of noise when they are trying to attract their mate. And so let's just hear the traditional mating sound of the great horned owl. We've been hearing that where I live, just south of Madison, in the past few nights. So it seems crazy to be mating in the middle of dead winter, but there you have it. The other thing I do when I come on is I like to read a poem. And here is a poem by Naomi Shihab Nye. She's a great Palestinian-American poet, contemporary. She has a very fitting poem called Burning the Old Year. Here it goes. Letters swallow themselves in seconds. Notes, friends tied to the doorknob, transparent scarlet paper, sizzle like moth wings, marry the air. So much of any year is flammable. Lists of vegetables, partial poems, orange, swirling flame of days. So little is stone. Where there was something and suddenly isn't, where there was something and suddenly isn't, an absence shouts, celebrates, leaves a space. I begin again with the smallest numbers. Quick dance, shuffle of losses and leaves, only the things I didn't do crackle after the blazing dies. That's Naomi Shihab Nye, a poem called Burning the Old Year. Angela, while we have about 2 minutes left, I just wondered how you got through this year. Who gave you inspiration? Who did you look to for wisdom?
First and foremost, shout out to my therapist, who has helped me get through this year. But I always say it, maybe it's a cliche answer, but there's something about being in the office with the team, with the ambassadors, and having a sense of community. Like, there are times it is hard to get out of bed. Seasonal depression is real. Regular depression is real. And
political depression is real.
Political depression, yeah, right. All of these different things. It's rough, and I think we need to be honest that it can be really difficult. But to be around your people, whether it is your therapist or your team, but like being in community, I think is something so valuable and has helped me kind of recenter and reground myself. And that a lot of the things that we're all, including the listeners, are fighting for are the same things that we deserve as well. And so I find a lot of comfort in being in community, whether it's with the Block ambassadors, the staff, or even with family and friends.
Yeah, in community is crucial. I want to thank my wife, Jean, and our good friends who we will be celebrating with over the next few days. This was fun to be on with you yesterday and today, Angela. Yeah. I want to thank our guests from today, Earl Ingram, Scott Ross, Jim Santel. I want to thank the callers and the texters. I want to thank John and Gordy for inviting me to participate on their show. Aaron Zomers on the board is always great to work with. Terrific being with you, Aaron.
And thank you, too, for coming in and getting all these great guests and everything.
Yeah, I'm always available, and it's so much better when we have great guests. And Angela, I just love working with you and looking forward to doing so again. Stay tuned. Nightlight with the ever-entertaining Pete Schwaba and his sidekick Conrad is next.
Yes, some say it's just a part of it. We've got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing? these songs of freedom, 'cause all I ever had, redemption songs, all I ever had, redemption songs, these songs of freedom, songs of freedom.